Welcome to the Committee on Transportation. It's Monday, April 3rd, 2 o'clock. We're in room 1100 in the Minnesota Senate building, and we do have a quorum. Today we are going to be taking up Senate File 3157. We've already taken public testimony, so today we will be discussing and taking amendments if it turns out there are a few. And so, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. I appreciate the opportunity to, again, take 3157 from the table, and now we can have our opportunity for some discussion and some debate and some amendments. For better or for worse, we've taken a little more time than most committees do, so and we took a lot of testimony on Friday, and that resulted in a lot of hard work over the weekend. I will qualify, however, this process that we're going to go through in terms of debate and amendments by saying this will continue to be a work in progress, and of course we'll have some time before we hit the next two committee stops, and then of course we'll have a lot of time in the process of debate and discussion in conference committee with the House, because as it turns out, as good of friends as we are with our colleagues on the other side, our bills are somewhat different, and so we'll have a lot of grist for conversation, consideration, and debate through that process as well. And to my friends in the other party, even in that conference committee process, I hope that, maybe we'll have Senator Jasinski on the conference committee, but in any case, we'll have him close to the conference committee, and there'll be a lot of continued discussion and collaboration. Just very quickly, I don't think I'm going to give a big speech to launch the bill, other than to say this is an aspiration to meaningfully invest in Minnesota's transportation system. Unlike that which we've done for 30 years, we've done some big bills in recent years, but they've all been consisted mostly of some smallish transfers of general fund and a large amount of bonding in our trunk highway funds. We're facing a fiscal cliff because we haven't done the kind of support through appropriations for our transit system. And so we see the result, of course, in people's inability to get to the things that are important in their lives, to be successful and prosperous. We see goods not getting to market, services not getting to market, and a roadway system that is in very, very poor shape, especially our local roads. One of the hallmarks, I think, of this bill is strong support for our local road jurisdiction, 80% of the vehicle miles, or the roadway miles in our state. That is really one of my aspirations, is to really support that part of our roadway network, take pressure off property taxes, and to make sure that every trip that starts and finishes on a local road is done on a good and decent, high-quality road. So with that, Madam Chair, with the committee's indulgence, I'd like to start with a couple of amendments, because they are new ideas that are patterned off of bills that have been introduced by members of ours. We have, in one instance, a member here to present his idea, and then he needs to get off to another committee. So I'd like to invite Senator Fateh forward to talk about electric vehicle bike rebates.
Sounds good.
E-bike rebates.
Okay. Welcome to the testifiers table, Senator Fateh. Before you begin, I just want to say that in accordance with the rules of the Senate, the following member will be participating remotely, Senator Lang from Olivia, Minnesota, just for the record. So with that, Senator Fateh, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Dibble. Senator Fateh. With me also is Mr. Dorian Grilly. He's just here for if there's any technical questions. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak on this amendment, which is a modified version of SF 2653. The goal of the bill is to make it more affordable for people to buy electric asset bicycles or e-bikes. With e-bikes, you can use your pedal power when you feel up to it, or use the electric assist when you're tired or going up a hill. This option makes bicycling available to a wide range of people of different ages and abilities who wouldn't otherwise be able to. Unfortunately, e-bikes are quite expensive, and many people who would be interested in using them are not able to afford them. There is a public interest in making e-bikes more available, because when people use them instead of driving, it reduces pollution, reduces traffic congestion, and promotes public health. This amendment would provide a need-based tax credit of up to $1,500 of the cost of an e-bike to make them more accessible and to make them more accessible to people specifically from low-income backgrounds. With me today is Dorian Grilly of the Bicycle Alliance, if there's any technical questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Fateh.
And Madam Chair, I don't know if I referenced
Senator
the amendment is the A4 amendment, if folks are rifling through their packets.
Thank you. Members, to the A4, questions, discussion. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Fateh. So at line number 1.26 says the credit limit to $1,500 except for a married tax filing. The limit is $1,500 per spouse. So what's the total dollar amount per house? Is it $1,500 per person? Is that what it is?
Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe, yes, $1,500 per person.
So if a married couple would be $3,000 and a child would be another $1,500, so you could basically, what's the maximum, I guess is my question. I don't see it specifically here.
Senator Fateh.
Mr. Grilly.
Dorian Grilly with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota.
Mr. Grilly.
Senator Jasinski, I think it's written that it's just a married filing a joint return could have two. So it'd have to be a third taxpayer. So it's only two per house, two per married filing a joint return.
Okay,
Senator Jasinski.
thank you.
So
Senator Dibble.
to be clear, they would each have to buy a bike. It's not two, I don't think it's 2 credits for one bike, if I'm correct,
Right.
and maybe Mr. Greenfield can confirm that.
One bike per person.
Thank you.
Mr. Greenfield, are you looking?
Madam Chair, if you don't mind repeating the question, I'm having some technical difficulties pulling the amendment up.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you. I'm just confirming that the intent is one available credit per person,
So 2 per couple.
2 per couple, 1 per bike.
Madam Chair and Mr. Chair,
Greenfield.
I do believe the answer is it's intended to be $1,500 per either a married couple filing a joint return or an individual purchasing an e-bike.
Senator Jasinski.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And are there income guidelines on that as well? There's something about line 2.4, $50,000 for a married taxpayer filing a joint return. So you're going to get a credit depending on what you make. Is that correct?
Senator Fateh. Mr. Grilly.
Mr. Grilly.
Yes, that's correct. It starts at $25,000 for an individual, $50,000 for a married couple, and for each $4,000 you make, the credit is reduced by 1 percentage point for each $4,000 that you make over $25,000 for an individual and $50,000 for a married couple.
Senator Jasinski.
Sorry, I'm just reading it's new, so I'm just trying to figure out. So say a couple making $150,000, does it apply to them or it does not apply to them?
Mr. Grilly.
Senator Jasinski, it would reach the minimum. It reduces from 75% credit to 50% credit and stops there. So you would get $750 as a credit instead of $1,500.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just so I understand it, it says, married tax for the limit is $1,500 per spouse, but it does say it's limited to $1,500 except for married taxpayer. So is it limited by age, or as long as they file a tax return, they can get the $1,500?
Mr. Grilly.
Senator Howe, yes, it's not limited by age. It's just limited by income.
So,
Senator
Madam
Howe.
Chair, So someone that, if I've got a child that happens to make $15,000 working at Burger King or whatever, they can actually file for this and get this. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Okay, Senator Fateh, final words?
Yeah, thank you so much, and I want to appreciate Mr. Grilli and the Bicycle Alliance for bringing forward this bill and for the committee hearing this, so thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
So I need someone to move the A4.
Madam Chair, could we have a roll call, please?
Roll call requested. We will have a roll call. We need someone to move the A4. Senator McEwen?
So moved.
Thank you. So we have the A4 amendment before us. We'll roll call, and the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble,
Yes.
Vice Chair Morrison,
Yes.
Senator Jasinski,
No.
Senator Carlson,
Yes.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
Yes.
Senator Howe, Senator Lang,
No.
Senator McEwen,
Yes.
Senator Port,
Yes.
Senator Coleman,
There being 6 aye votes and 3 no votes, the motion prevails, and the A4 amendment. And the motion prevails and the A4 is adopted. Okay, amendments. Senator Dibble.
So, Madam Chair, I would like to offer the A16 amendment, and again, this is, as I mentioned, a whole new, totally unpresented idea. The contents of a bill that was more recently introduced, so we'd like to present the proposal to the committee and see what their wishes are on the matter. And I'd like to invite Peter Ruginius forward to help me explain the proposal. It has to do with requiring the Metropolitan Council to study and plan for the Greenway bike extension through the from Minneapolis to St. Paul. And the resources for that would be resources from the Metropolitan Council. So it would not be a general fund proposition, but rather should the added revenue that's proposed in this bill be successful, it would be drawn from those revenues, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. And I see you have a testifier. Welcome to the testifiers table. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Peter Ruginius. I'm Legislative Director at Sierra Club. And I need to share your screen, I believe, through the Zoom in order to... Oh, is that how you do it? Okay. I thought it was through the Zoom. Beth can perhaps provide me with... If I could get a little, oh, there it is. Look at that.
Okay. All right.
All right, Madam Chair, the genesis of this bill is easiest to describe in pictures, and so I'll use the pictures to describe it. This bill is about taking the next step to extend the Midtown Greenway to the east over the Mississippi River into Ramsey County. In doing so, we will be building on and extending a nationally recognized success story, which is described in detail on a Federal Highways Administration website in an article called A Crown Jewel of Bikeways. To orient you to the project, here's a map of the Minneapolis portion of the Greenway. It is worth noting that this trail keeps going under different names into western suburbs as far as Eden Prairie and beyond. The Minneapolis section was originally built for railroads to traverse the city from east to west in a trench to avoid at-grade street crossings. Eventually, as the rail traffic went away over time, this created a perfect corridor for people to safely bike, walk, and roll, separated from auto traffic. It is the most well-used such trail in Minnesota. The Minneapolis Public Works Department calculated that it carries more people just walking and biking on an average day than 90% of Minneapolis streets, including people in cars. In Minneapolis, it was converted to trail use in segments starting in the year 2000. Phase 1 starts like this and runs between Bide-Makaska and Lake of the Isles. It connects to the Uptown Transit Station. You've all heard, no doubt, about transit-oriented development and the environmental and equity benefits of transit-oriented developments. Perhaps you didn't know that the Midtown Greenway is a nation-leading example of bicycle-oriented development. There are blocks and blocks along the Greenway that look just like this. Blocks with non-subsidized housing on the corridor, housing marketed to tenants as being situated with doors facing the Greenway for easy access. People love living next to this. Phase 2, and here's from a recent MinPost article describing the huge economic development benefits of this investment. The return on investment has been extraordinary. Phase 2 connects past 5th Street to the Midtown Exchange. It goes by Pocket Parks and ends at the Blue Line Station and the Sabo Bridge over Hiawatha Avenue. As of 2021, it also includes a one-block extension to the Orange Line BRT station at Lake Street. Phase 3 is a little bit less wide since it runs parallel to active rail line, but it still carries a lot of people. So, what is next? Right now, the project ends just a few feet shy of the Mississippi River. Getting over the river would involve using the downstream half of the short line bridge. Here's a picture of the bridge from the river perspective, and here's a map of the bridge. What I want you to notice on this map is around about where you see the 94 signal above, indicating 94, there is a green line extending south from that point. That is Emerald Street. That is the border between Minneapolis and St. Paul, the border between Ramsey County and Hennepin County. This involves a jurisdictional problem which this bill is designed to overcome. The bridge, as you'll see, both ends are in Hennepin County, but the beneficiaries of an extension are overwhelmingly in Ramsey County. Senator Mohammed believes, and the advocates believe, that the best way to overcome this challenge is to place this work in the hands of an entity whose jurisdiction includes both Minneapolis and St. Paul, both Hennepin and Ramsey County. The bridge itself, it's worth noting, is well positioned to take this amenity. You'll see this is from the east bank of the bridge, and you can see the bridge was originally built for 2 sets of tracks. One set of, and you see one of them still exists on the right-hand side of that photo. The tracks on the left side, or the downstream half of the bridge, are long since gone, decades gone. There's plenty of space, and this has been studied already, that indicate it has enough space for to safely install a trail. This is a view of that same, but through the fence, so you can see just how much space there is. So what do you get when you get to the other side? And this is the last slide. What I want you to notice on this slide is this is a map of the St. Paul Bicycle Network, although a portion of about the left quarter of this is in the city of Minneapolis. What you'll notice is there's a lot of existing bike connectivity in the north-south direction. Franklin Avenue is in the upper left, and within the city of St. Paul, you have Pelham Boulevard, you have Cleveland, you have Pryor, you have Fairview. The black lines indicate what this project would build and how many different facilities it would connect. I would note 2 more things on this slide. Past Cleveland Avenue, the connection to Alliance Field can be built without using railroad land. So these segments have independent utility. That is a crucial criteria when seeking federal funds down the road when we're looking to construct this facility. There are pieces of this, with or without the railroad, that could be built that would connect existing facilities. Those existing facilities, Pelham, Cleveland, Pryor, and Fairview, all of those red lines indicate existing bike facilities. And of course, Alliance Field is shared as a major destination, but I don't want to give the impression that that is the only purpose behind this. It is to expand and integrate and connect existing facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Reginius. Senator Dibble, did you want to add in something?
I do know, Madam Chair, that the A16, which I moved, is being redraft. Oh, we have a new version, so I'll withdraw my motion to move the A16, and I will move whatever that one is.
TBD. Thank you.
This also says A16. But it looks different, so,
Okay.
all right.
We're going to ask Ms. Boyd to please explain.
Madam Chair and members, thank you. Sorry about the confusion. We thought we caught it before it was posted or distributed, so it has the same number. The only differences are that it's purely technical, nothing really changes. It's on line 1.6, take out, I don't have the old version in front of me, but take out the line about using tax revenues, and that verbiage has been moved down on lines 217 and 218, just saying that the council must allocate revenues collected under the metro sales tax for the purpose of the planning activities. So it's just a technical change.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Senator Dibble.
I think we should also maybe address the typo, Metropolitan Council. Should be COUNCIL.
Ah, yes. Would you like to offer an oral amendment, Senator Dibble?
I will offer Council COUNCIL to replace Council COUNSEL. Unless we can just do
Mr.
that.
Greenfield?
Madam Chair, thank you. On page 1, line 6, the instruction should read, page 1, line 6, delete council, COUNSEL, and insert initial cap COUNCIL.
Do we need to do that?
I'll take care of that. You can read it out.
Okay, so the oral amendment, as outlined by Mr. Greenfield, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, the amendment is adopted.
And then, Madam Chair, I'll just renew my motion to adopt the A16, and just to say that this bicycle facility is not really a recreational facility. It's used for recreational purposes, but it's used in large measure, I would guess even majority of those using it are getting about their daily business, whether to work or running errands. I would invite any member of this committee to go stand in the middle of that trail at any time of the day, in any weather, and see how heavily it's used. It's like a bike superhighway. You take your life in your hands just walking across. It's very, very heavily traveled, and to make the jump to St. Paul would make it just that much more viable for true transportation purposes.
Members, discussion. Senator Jasinski.
So thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Dibble, so would you consider this an earmark?
Senator Dibble.
Well, Madam Chair, it's a study. So it might become an earmark at some point in time, but we're just looking at it, figuring out if it's a good idea or not.
Just had to get that in there, sorry.
Members, further discussion on the A16? Okay. Then we need someone to move the A16. Senator McEwen? Thank you, Senator McEwen. So members, all in favor of the A16 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, the A16 as amended is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Wagenius. Senator Dibble.
Madam Chair, maybe we should do some of the technical amendments now. Maybe council can remind me which ones are those. And also then help us understand them.
Okay, we're going to start with the A8. Are you going to explain?
Yeah.
Ms. Boyd? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Senator Dibble, do you want to move the A8?
I'll move the A8, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Senator Dibble moves the A8. Ms. Boyd?
Okay. Madam Chair, thank you. The A8 is very largely technical. As pointed out in the walkthrough last week, there were a number of technical changes that needed to be made, so I'm not going to walk through this line by line. Some of it were things that staff caught, some of it were things that the revisor caught, and just generally it was making sure that things were marked as a one-time appropriation when they needed to be, making sure that we stated a base when we needed to under an appropriation, things of that nature, correcting some numbers. But everything reflects what was laid out in the spreadsheet and then walked through last week. So I'll just point out some individual pieces. Starting on line 1.23, this is language just to clarify the purpose of the $1.2 million appropriation to MnDOT for land transfer to the Upper Sioux community. That was just better stated language than what is currently in the bill, and I believe there was a blank we were filling in as well. Line 125 and 126, again, is more clarifying language on the purpose of the $250,000 appropriation to MnDOT for the working group on clean transportation fuel. On the next page, starting on line 2.16, there are two riders under, I believe this is under program delivery. I apologize, under MnDOT, under State Road Construction. And this was two rider sections that were for IIJA matches for federal funds. They were largely similar. They were combined to save space, and there was a distinction made in the last lines of that rider of what the second rider was for. Then on page 3, starting on line 311, this was rider language that was reflected, or this was an appropriation that was reflected in the spreadsheet, but the rider language did not make it into the draft before it was rolled out. And this is for the purpose of race and ethnicity information collection under DPS. Let's see, and then on lines 319 and 320, this was replacement language, just reflecting better drafted language for the true purposes. Similarly on that was for the Traffic Safety Advisory Council appropriation. On lines 321 and 322, this is for an appropriation for a study, about a public information campaign regarding laws about the passing of parked authorized vehicles, and I believe we were just doing some better language there. And then starting on line 323, these were a number of riders that were missed in the drafting under the Office of Traffic Safety at DPS. These were all reflected in the spreadsheet that was walked through, so this is just the language to pick up those appropriations. On page 4, starting on line 4.23, this was fiscal year 23 appropriations to DPS for an operating deficiency at State Patrol. On line 425 is the appropriation from Truck Highway Fund, and 428 appropriating from the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. This, again, was reflected in the spreadsheet. The intent of the draft, the language was just missed in the first draft. Let's see. And then on line 5.4, this was a blank under the distribution of the revenues from the delivery fee, the 75-cent delivery fee. So that was filled in as explained in the walkthrough last week. 70% to HUTDF, 20% to CASA, 9% to Municipal State Aid Street Fund, and 1% to the new food delivery support account. Line 5.8 is a deletion of a subdivision under the Metro Sales Tax provisions, and that was not intended to be in the draft. That was a drafting error. And then after that, starting on 510 and after, these are all very technical revisor suggestions that we got into the draft at this point rather than do it on the other end. So that's it, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Oh, one more, Mr. Greenfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to highlight on page, there's an and or an or. On page 6, line 14 of the A8 amendment, there's an instruction for page 141, line 21. This addresses Senate File 577, the reintegration license proposal heard before the committee. It's a Senator McEwen bill. This is not quite a technical change, but was flagged by the revisor as to a question about intent. If you look at the underlying delete everything on this line, there's a reference to the fees that the commissioner must not charge as a result of the reintegration license. As per the revised drafting conventions, if those two clauses are united with an and, that means the commissioner is prohibited from charging both of those fees as opposed to electing to choose one or the other. So an or is inserted to ensure that the commissioner must not charge a fee for either the first scenario or the second scenario on page 141 around line 21.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Members, discussion on the A8 technical amendment. Okay. Senator Dibble.
Madam Chair, on that last point, that was a point of discussion that we had in committee. Concern, of course, that we're asking the DRs to do work without compensation. We have not yet solved that problem in this proposal, but we will continue to look at that and figure out how DRs can receive compensation for what would otherwise, be, a full transaction that they would have to undertake at some expense to themselves. So I just want to make note of that so that the committee knows we'll continue to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Senator Port, would you move the A8?
So moved.
Thank you. So the A8 is before us. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the A8 is adopted. Next up, Senator Dibble.
Let's see, I think the A15 is a somewhat technical amendment as well, so I'd like to offer the A15.
So Senator Dibble moves the A15. Are you guys going to
Oh, yes, this,
Are you going to explain this one? Okay, thank you. Mr. Greenfield will explain it
Yeah.
when he finds it.
and Madam Chair, it's actually not technical. It has to do with the transit safety proposal, and it would reflect some of the discussion that has occurred in the other body that I was amenable to. So, yeah, Mr. Greenfield could help us understand what those are.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chair Dibble. The A15 is attempting to integrate the changes made to the House companion to Senate File 1049. The number escapes me off the top of my head. There were some small changes that I'm going to walk through in the A15 that, like Senator Dibble mentioned, aren't quite technical, but do bring the language in conformity with what the House is proposing. On page 1, line point 3 of the A15, this is adding bus rapid transit stations as to where the code of conduct must be placed by the Metropolitan Council. Previous language under 1049 and the delete everything, it's only light rail transit stations and park and ride stations. So this wanted to be more inclusive of the Metropolitan Council transit locations where the code of conduct must be published. Page 1, line 5 of the A15 has a reference to the code of conduct. This is a change from Senate File 1049 and the delete everything because the original version requires a peace officer to order a person to depart a transit vehicle or transit facility. This allows an authorized transit representative. The definition of an authorized transit representative does include a peace officer, so the intent of 1049 is captured by this change, but the change here also allows trip personnel that are authorized by Senate File 1049 and Senate File 3157 to order a person to depart. So it's the same standard for ordering someone to depart as a result of a code of conduct violation, but this broadens the classification of the people who can order the person violating the rules to depart. On lines 1.11 of the A15 all the way through lines 1.16, those are some small technical changes. I'll note on 1.12, we added the words "and maintain" to requiring the Metropolitan Council to implement monitoring technology at stations and vehicles. So the Met Council is required to both implement and maintain those monitoring technologies. And then on page 1, line 17 of the A15, there is an additional training requirement being added that trains peace officers on the program and issuance of administrative citations under the Transit Rider Investment Program. On page 1, line 20 through page 1, lines 27, those are some technical changes relating to the drafting of Senate File 1049 and when it was folded into the Omnibus. On page 1, line 28 of the A15, there is a brief reference that is being changed to the misdemeanor offense for disorderly conduct on a transit vehicle or transit station. This just provides that a misdemeanor offense for damage to transit property or a transit vehicle must not be classified as first degree, second degree, or third degree criminal damage to property, and instead must be exclusively the requirements of fourth degree criminal damage to property under 609-595. On page 2 of the 815, this is just another stylistic change at the beginning where the clause about placing vandalism, defacement, or graffiti is now its own separate standalone clause that would necessitate a misdemeanor or would potentially warrant a misdemeanor offense. On page 2, line 3 of the 815, this is a change from the Senate File 1049 language and the Omnibus language to require the Metropolitan Council to institute the Transit Rider Intervention Program. That's the short-term intervention program that will be deployed on light rail transit vehicles regarding coordination with social services, Metro Transit Police, and community service officers for riders experiencing homelessness, issues with substance abuse or mental health issues. Previous language required the trip manager to administer that program. This lightens their workload and directs it to the Metropolitan Council. On page 2, line 6 of the A15, we're adding the Metropolitan Airports Commission to the interested parties who must participate in the Transit Service Intervention Project, or who the council must coordinate with for the Transit Service Intervention Project. And then there are conforming changes the rest of the way, and a removal on page 2, line 11 of the responsibilities for the trip manager and placing them with the Metropolitan Council. So some blend of conforming changes, but also some technical grammatical changes as well.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Members, discussion. Senator Howe.
Madam Chair, could staff explain to me when you went through the deal about they can only be charged with subdivision 4, what are subdivision 1, 2, and 3, and why can they only be charged with subdivision 4?
Mr. Greenfield.
Madam Chair, Senator Howe, that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure behind the intent of that change to say that this bill has not been heard in judiciary, but what I would say is that the references that it does not apply to are first degree damage, criminal damage to property, second degree damage to property, and I'm not entirely sure how those coexist, but as I understand it, the fourth degree criminal damage to property equivalent for a transit vehicle is if someone damages parts of a light rail vehicle or the transit station that hits a certain dollar threshold, but below a certain threshold for personal property. So I'm not entirely sure exactly how it fits in, but I think as I understand it, the fourth degree damage to property applies to damaging the vehicle property or the transit station itself, not other property on the vehicle or at the station.
Senator Howe, follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's, I guess, where my concern is, dependent upon the value and the amount of damage they do. I can't understand, and I don't know what those, I sit on judiciary, I don't remember going through this, but my concern is if they do a substantial amount of damage, if subdivision 1 has more penalties, I would think we'd want to charge them with subdivision 1. This seems like it limits your capabilities of charging some with that, and that's my concerns with this piece of the part of the legislation. And having not, I don't believe, seen it in judiciary, I'm just a little concerned that it maybe limits the capabilities of charging them really in connection or with the amount of damage that they're actually doing. So I would think that the more damage they do, the higher level of what you charge them with. And I think this seems to be handcuffing us in a manner that we can't get there, and that pun is intended.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You don't remember discussing this in judiciary because it hasn't been heard yet in judiciary, so you're not quite getting that old yet. Your memory does serve you. It's going to be taken up next week as a standalone in judiciary. But I would be comfortable, Madam Chair, I don't know, Mr. Greenfield, if it's possible to excise this little piece out from this amendment at this point in time.
Are you proposing an oral amendment,
Yes.
Senator Dibble? Okay, Mr. Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chair Dibble. So if you wish to orally amend the A15, the instruction would be page 1, delete lines 28 and 29.
Madam Chair, I'll make that that motion to make that oral amendment.
Okay,
To the
Senator
A15.
Dibble moves an oral amendment to the A15. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, the oral amendment to the A15 is adopted. I do want to just interject that we're having technical difficulties. If you're watching online, please bear with us. We will be back soon. Or if you're looking for captions, we're working on it, and our apologies. Members, discussion on the A15 as amended. All right. Senator Carlson, do you want to move the A15 as amended? Thank you, sir. Members, all in favor of the A15 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, the A15 as amended orally is adopted. Senator Dibble, next.
So, Madam Chair, I think I have 2 more, maybe 3 more kind of technically oriented amendments. If I could offer those, and then we'll throw it open.
Very good.
So I will start with the A6. I think that's,
Okay, Senator Dibble moves the A6.
and if council could help us understand, these are
Mr.
some date
Greenfield.
changes requested by Department of Public Safety, I believe.
Mr. Greenfield.
Madam Chair and Chair Dibble, that's correct. These are effective dates that were talked about with the Department of Public Safety. There were some open questions about whether certain sections would be effective when the bill language was brought into the omnibus. So this is just an attempt on my part to clarify with the Department of Public Safety what those effective dates should be, and these are the ones that they suggested and were agreeable with Chair Dibble.
Members, questions on the A6? Okay. Senator Hurd, do you want to move the A6?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hurd. Members, we are voting on the A6. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, the A6 is adopted.
Madam Chair, I have the A39, which
Senator
are
Dibble moves the A39.
some changes requested by the Department of Transportation.
The A39 will be distributed.
Thanks.
Senator Dibble, do you want to explain the A39, or would you rather have counsel?
I would rather have council do it, Madam Chair.
Mr. Greenfield.
Madam Chair and Chair Dibble, thank you. This is the amendment to, that reflects some suggestions made by the Department of Transportation. I believe there was a question about noxious weed control, and that's clarified here. But everything else has just been suggested by MnDOT and was agreed upon by Chair Dibble.
Members, discussion on the A39. Okay, members, all in favor of the A39, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A39 is adopted. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move the A5, and I know that Senator Jasinski or someone from Team Jasinski might have something else in mind with respect to the A5, but it has to do with use of general fund versus trunk highway funds for paying for the upkeep and rent, if you will, or, just the expenses of MnDOT's headquarters on the Capitol campus here. Part of the discussion that we've had over the last few years over appropriate use of trunk highway funds versus general fund. I, though I'm sympathetic to the discussion, believe that, and the courts have affirmed that use of trunk highway funds is appropriate for headquarters, and so that's what this would accomplish. I know that Senator Jasinski has a proposal. I'm not sure how it fits in with this, or if Senator Jasinski would then offer a future proposal that would try to create a mix of general fund and trunk highway fund. Maybe Mr. Greenfield can help us find our way through this. If we adopt the A5, then would Senator Jasinski be free to offer his future amendment that would then allow us to have that discussion?
Okay, Senator Dibble moves the A5. Mr. Greenfield.
I'm going to defer to my colleague, Ms. Boyd. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify that there's already language to this provision in the bill. There's a repealer of an open appropriation that was installed from the general fund for the costs of the MnDOT central office building that was in the last budget bill. So the A1 already has that repealer in it. This is a conforming change in the A5 that was meant to be included. In section 161.045, there's a limitations on spending from highway user tax or trunk highway funds. And repealing the open appropriation from the general fund moves the costs of the office building back into trunk highway fund where they have been funded. So on 1.23, that prohibition is deleted. And that's the only change in the A5. And I will defer to Senator Jasinski if he'd like to speak about it.
Senator Jasinski, do you have a comment about the A5?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Dibble. So our amendment, to my understanding, is not ready yet, but it will be. And again, my discussion that we've had for many years with Senator Newman is leakages. I have some concern about these funds not being used for highway purposes and actually roads and bridges type construction. So I will be getting an amendment drafted here that should be done shortly. So with that, I'll just defer until then. But again, our concern is that the building, the money that should be used for roads and bridges being used for buildings, and consider that as a leakage. So that is our concern, and you'll see my amendment coming shortly. But thank you.
So, Madam Chair?
Senator Dibble, in the meantime, do you want to move the A4?
Yeah, I would like to.
Five, sorry.
I'd like to move the A5, and then I think what would happen is if we adopt the Jasinski, then that would supersede the A5.
Okay, members' discussion to the A5. All right, all in favor, oh, sorry, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I agree. I mean, I think most people, when they pay the gas tax and their registration fees, believe it's all going to something for roads and bridges, and I think that that's this paying rent and that type of thing is not what they intend, and I don't think that's what they think their money is going for when they do that, when you talk about roads and bridges. So I am opposed to this amendment.
Madam Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
One, Senator Howe made me think of that. And I think years ago I was told that Minnesota or MnDOT owned the actual building they're in now, and they deeded that to MMB, and now they pay rent to MMB for that building. Maybe someone from MnDOT can clarify that, but again, that's our concern. Is it was the building at one time, to my understanding, was owned by MnDOT. They deeded that over to MMB, and then now they pay rent on it. So maybe someone from MnDOT can explain that and clarify.
Someone from MnDOT, welcome to the testifiers table. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric Radine with MnDOT Government Affairs. And yes, our understanding is that the building was originally constructed with trunk highway dollars when it was constructed for what was then the Department of Highways. But it has since been turned over actually to Department of Administration. There's a requirement, I believe, that Department of Administration owns all the buildings on the Capitol complex. So admin currently owns the building, and MnDOT had paid rent to use that building.
Senator Jasinski.
So Madam Chair, then just to follow up, so we're paying for it twice then. So it was once owned by MnDOT, got transferred to administration, and now we're paying money back a second time out of trunk highway funds. Again, that's the concern. That's what we brought forward in years past. So we're paying for it twice at the taxpayer expense. What they thought should be going to roads and bridges is now paying for buildings a second time. So that's my concern. I don't think that's right. So that's why I'm opposed to it. And you'll see the amendment coming that we understand that some of that money should go towards that because we know there's a lot of highway purposes there, but not all of it. There's a lot of other things that happen there that are outside of roads and bridges being done at that building. So that amendment will be coming. But again, citizens, remember, we're paying for this twice now. We paid for it once, and now we're going to pay it for it twice. And that's our concern. Thank you.
Senator Dibble or Mr. Rudine, comment, reply, response.
I very much appreciate Senator Jasinski's perspective and respect it.
Very good. Okay, members, further discussion on the A5. Okay, all in favor of the A5, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. No. The amendment is adopted. The A5 is adopted. Senator Dibble, next.
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer the A40, the A40 amendment.
Senator Dibble moves the A40. Senator Dibble?
So as it comes, is it distributed? Oh, I thought it was.
Oh, sorry. I do have it. Okay. Does everyone have the A40?
Oh, I do have
Okay.
it.
Senator Dibble,
didn't realize
would
it
you like
was
to describe the A40?
right on top of my pile here, too. Madam Chair, this is just a refinement of, should the proposed sales tax in the metro area prevail and be passed into law, this would change how those funds would be distributed. I'll have Ms. Boyd perhaps help me explain a little better.
Ms. Boyd? Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, thank you. The A40 has to deal with the distribution of the revenues from the metro area sales tax. And the first change starting on page 1.3 is instead of allocating 1/6 to the Transportation Advisory Board, that 1/6 would instead go to the Commissioner Management Budget and deposited into the County State Aid Highway Fund. And then the next change is that the amount, the 5/6 of the sales tax revenues that go to the Metropolitan Council are further split 5% for the Metropolitan Area Active Transportation Program and 95% for transit system purposes. Those are on lines 1/6 and 1/7. Line 1/8 is actually, what is that? That is eliminating a subdivision. I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll to it. That's eliminating a paragraph that says that the required uses of the sales tax revenue do not prevent expenditure for additional purposes as determined by the council. I believe more language might be forthcoming in this area, but that was determined to be too vague, I think, at this point, and that's being worked on. And then further, the use of the funds that are then put in the County State Aid Highway Fund would be under, starting on line 110, that these funds would be distributed to the metropolitan counties and apportioned 50% of the revenues by population of the metro counties and 50% by the money needs of the metro counties, and that is defined in statute already under the County State Aid chapter.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Members, discussion on the A40. All right, members, all in favor of the A40, or no, we need someone to move it. Senator Hurd, would you move the A40?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hurd. Members, all in favor of the A40, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The A40 is adopted.
So, Madam Chair.
Senator Dibble.
I have some other amendments, but they're more substantive, so I think I will stop monopolizing the committee's attention and see if other folks have discussion, questions, or other amendments.
Senator Howe.
Madam Chair, I think even though you're calling for us to comment, I I don't think we had quite enough time to look at that, because I just realized that we deleted a section where we prohibited use of some funds we had prohibited use of funds, and this just deleted that section, so now they can use the funds in a certain area that I don't think we really intended to do, but it's a little day late and a dollar short. That's, but with that, I would like to move because my good colleague Senator Lang isn't here, I'm going to move his amendment, the A34.
Senator Howe moves the A34.
And basically what this does is direct.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It just basically directs if there's any amount remaining on this appropriation, it's dedicated for an intersection, and if staff can maybe elaborate on that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Ms. Boyd, could you elaborate on the A34, please?
Madam Chair, I will tell you what I can. This is amending laws 2018, in which a certain amount of $400 million was allotted for trunk highway bonding for the Corridors of Commerce program. And then starting on line 2.6, in addition to the uses stated at that time for this money, it just states that notwithstanding those project selection requirements, any remaining amount of that appropriation is for a project at Mark Trunk Highway 9 and Mark Trunk Highway 23 in the city of New London for safety improvements at that intersection.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Senator Howe?
Yes, Madam Chair. So this, actually what it does is that when this project, this Highway 23 project, there was the fill-in for a section that was still 2-lane. When they went out for bid, there was actually, it came in under what they estimated. So if it actually is completed with that, this would go for that intersection between Trunk Highway 9 and Highway 23 at that city of New London, and that extra funds would actually make that intersection complete. And so that's what the amendment does, and that intersection really needs some help, and I think whatever extra funding we can do to put it there would be well used.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would view this amendment as friendly. Senator Lang has been talking to me about this issue since, I think, the first day of session. So, I think the question is, whether or not there is any leftover money in the project, but if there is, it sounds like he's solving a problem that's been the source of a lot of local discussion. So I'm fine. I support the A34.
Madam Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
I just also thank you, Senator Dibble, to make a comment. I think we've been talking about it for about 6 years when Senator Lang and I came in as well. So we do appreciate your openness to take this into consideration, and I just hope MnDOT also is listening as well, that this is one of the bad intersections that we've been talking about for going on 7 years now. So we appreciate you trying to work with us, and I know it's probably considered an earmark, but it is something that we should definitely look at, and because there is some huge safety concerns there. So thank you, Senator Dibble, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, anyone else want to comment on the A34 before we vote? Okay, members, all in favor of the A34, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no? Okay, the A34 is adopted. Congratulations, Senator Lang. Members, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to offer the A19 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A19.
And Madam Chair, while they're distributing, I think it should be in your package, actually. This is the Corridors of Commerce selection criteria. We have not reached full agreement yet. There's a version that's coming from the other body. We have kind of our own version we've been working on for a couple years. I've talked with Senator Dibble about this. It's not where we want to end up, but we want to make sure this language gets inserted so we can possibly talk at a later time. It really just talks about how the selection process and what we're trying to do is get balance across the state. And there's two different theories on how to do that, and we just haven't quite come up with the one that we believe is the best yet. So I know I've talked to Senator Dibble that hopefully we would consider as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we had heard a bill on this subject earlier this year, and I think we supported it unanimously on a voice vote. This is a conversation that we will propel into the conference committee, so I am supportive of the A19 amendment.
Okay, members, further discussion on the A19. Okay. All in favor of the A19, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A19 is adopted. Members, amendments. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would offer the A28 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A28.
And Madam Chair, I believe this one is also in the packet. This deals with the Corridors of Commerce program, which we believe is a very valuable tool across Minnesota. Many important roads have been funded through this process. It continues to be tweaked on how we do the selection process. We've seen a lot of improvements over the years. But the big thing that we think we're missing is the dedicated funding for this program. So obviously, some years it gets funded, some years it doesn't. So it's difficult to plan for. And as we've had discussions with Senator Dibble, I know he's not a fan of constituent requests or earmarks, but we believe this is a program that actually will eliminate some of those projects coming forward through this process instead, which is a program that gets a lot of input from stakeholders, MnDOT, communities, counties, and all the people involved. So what this asks for is dedicated funding for the Corridors of Commerce program. And I hope it would be considered a friendly amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am provisionally supportive, though I had a question for Ms. Boyd about a future amendment that I don't see in front of me, and I might have lost track of, which would increase our level of bonding, assuming that we receive the additional revenue that is proposed in the bill, which would include additional resources for through bonding, through trunk highway bonds for Corridors of Commerce, as well as the state road construction program. I'm wondering if this proposal is compatible with that, and would it be possible for me to offer that future amendment? Parenthetically, I'm supportive of figuring out a way of finding a way to create an ongoing stream so that we're not reinventing the wheel every time in terms of how much we're going to do for Corridors of Commerce. Because I agree with Senator Jasinski's proposition that Corridors of Commerce is that place where we can go and advance some projects that have resulted from community discussion, collaboration, kind of reach down the regular STIP process or around the STIP process. It's a place to go for basically for competitive grant making on projects that have kind of regional collaboration. It's a really important program to have in addition to the regular schedule of projects. And so that's the power and the utility of Corridors of Commerce. I'm just making sure that our proposed growth in bonding would be compatible with this amendment.
Ms. Boyd, can you speak to marrying Senator Jasinski's amendment to Senator Dibble's idea?
Madam Chair and Senator Dibble, at this time, I would say that they're mutually exclusive. There's a common path between them, but not easily worked out at the committee table. I would say, if you'd like, I can highlight the differences quickly, although between your amendment and the offered amendment, if you would like.
Senator
Sure.
Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Ms. Boyd, if you could, if Senator Jasinski would indulge us with that exercise. Thanks.
Ms. Boyd.
Madam Chair, thank you. So Senator Jasinski's A28 amendment, Corridors of Commerce in the A1, Corridors of Commerce, of course, receives an ongoing $25 million appropriation in every year in the budget bill. That's their base amount from the Trunk Highway Fund. And that is the same in the A1, and also the A1 includes $300 million of bonding for Corridors of Commerce. What the A28 would do is shift some more ongoing money to Corridors of Commerce and take those amounts from the state road construction line item, the Trunk Highway Fund ongoing appropriation from state road construction. And then in its place, to some degree, those are all the shifts of appropriations on the top of the amendment. I'm not going to walk through each one, but You will see on line 1.11, by 2027, the ongoing appropriation for corridors would be $125 million as opposed to the current $25 million. There is no additional bonding for corridors of commerce in this amendment. The bonding that starts on line 1.15, those are adjustments to the bonding article, adds an additional $100 million for state road construction bonding in fiscal year 25 to sort of fill in some of those, that availability of funds that were taken from the ongoing appropriation. And so that's what that does. The A22, Senator Dibble's amendment, I don't know if anyone has it in front of you, but it's quite simple. It adds another $15 million in every year to the corridors of commerce appropriation, so that would go from $25 million to $40 million from the Trunk Highway Fund, and then adds an additional $300 million of bonding for corridors of commerce, and that's over 4 years. So instead of $300 in the first year, it would be $150 a year for 4 years of bonding for corridors. And then some additional bonding for state road construction as well. So instead of 150 one-time bonding in the A1, it would be $200 million, and that's $50 million a year over 5 years. So increased bonding for both in Senator Dibble's amendment and increased ongoing for corridors compared to Senator Jasinski's. And again, they're exclusive in the sense that they're similar, but they would affect the Trunk Highway Fund in different ways, and we couldn't do them both, but we could talk about a path between them.
Senator Dibble.
So, Madam Chair, maybe we could just simply adopt the Jasinski amendment. I could recede from the A22, and we'll figure something out on our way to the next stop.
So we'll proceed with the A28 right now. Okay. Members, further discussion to the A28? Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask for a roll call.
Roll call being requested. We will have a roll call. So Senator Jasinski moves the A28, and the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble,
Yes?
Vice Chair Morrison,
Yes.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson, Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
Yes.
Senator Howe, Senator Lang, Senator McEwen, Senator Port,
Yes.
Senator Coleman, Senator Lang,
Were there two more? There being 8 yes votes and 0 no votes, the motion prevails, and the A28 is adopted. Members, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Dibble, for that last one. I realized from staff brought it forward, they'd never seen an 8-0 roll call vote before, but I've seen one now, so thank you.
On record.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to offer the A32 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A32.
And members, I think this one's in your packet also. I think we had discussed it with Senator Dibble before we brought it forward today. What it does is we've been talking about the proposed blackout plates. What this does is puts that money towards our trunk highway. And I'll ask staff to go through any further than that if any more detail is requested.
Ms. Boyd, thank you.
Madam Chair, Senator Jasinski, thank you. Yeah, this, starting on line 1.6 of the A32, this is the governor's provision on the new Minnesota blackout special license plates. The difference between this and the governor's language is on line 1.15, that instead of the $30 annually minimum contribution being deposited in the driver and vehicle services operating account or the vehicle services operating account, it would be deposited in the trunk highway fund. And that's also seen on lines 127 and 128. And then that amount in the trunk highway fund is appropriated to the state road construction line item in the bill. And I actually have to suggest an oral amendment. We talked about earlier, there's some appropriation numbers wrong on line 13 and 14 I can go ahead with that, Madam Chair.
Please, Ms. Boyd.
On line 1.3, the second number of 1,254,683,000 is actually 1 billion, again, 1,253,813 million. So 1,253,813,000. And then on line 1.4, the second number, 1,227,985,000. Should actually be 1,223,845,000. So the second number should indeed be 1,223,845,000.
Okay, members. We are voting on the technical oral amendment to the A32. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The oral amendment to the A32 is adopted. Ms. Boyd, did you have more to say about the A32?
Madam Chair, no.
Okay. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am inclined, we spoke earlier about this, and I'm inclined to accept this amendment. My reservations are this. My reservation, of course, is it is well known that I am not a big fan of specialty license plates. I view this one as slightly different because it will be a very easy license plate to read. My issue, of course, is our license plates are just getting kind of junked up with purposes that have nothing to do with license plates, and I think it detracts from their core essential public safety purpose. And so I get concerned about bringing license plates into omnibus bills, because then every terrible idea for a license plate becomes like a magnet. I think this one perhaps is different enough that that may be avoided. I can feel the consternation behind me from the Department of Public Safety, who brought this idea forward for the purpose of raising additional revenue for the Driver and Vehicle Services newly construed fund. And I know that this proposal is in the proposal moving through the other body for that reason. So I'm agreeable to bring this into this bill at this time, to have that discussion about what the appropriate uses of those funds would be, and would request that at least the folks in this room help defend against all the terrible things that might be amended to this bill, because this is going in the form of special, quote unquote, specialty license plates. And to the Department of Public Safety, we're going to talk about what makes sense in terms of making sure that the things that they want to achieve, we find the resources for those, whether it's through this blackout license plate or some other way. So that's all a long-winded way of saying I would view this as a friendly amendment, Madam Chair.
Members, discussion on the A32 as amended. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Dibble. Again, I didn't propose the plate, but as long as the plate's going to be there, it sure be nice to put it towards highway, roads and bridges, so thank you.
Sorry, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I agree with you, Senator Dibble, and I also agree with Senator Jasinski that I'm not a big fan of additional special plates, and I don't really understand this plate at all. But if we are going to have money, I would much rather see it go to roads and bridges instead of wherever it was designed to go. So I agree with you. Thank you.
Okay, members, I look forward to talking about my Minnesota sports team's license plate bill. So members, we are voting on the A32 as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The A32 as amended is adopted. Members, amendments. Senator Jazinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As long as we're having fun this afternoon, no, this is a bill or an amendment that I talked to Senator Dibble about. We had talked about an AG report on the study for highway uses, and Senator Dibble took all my good language out of it, so the A18 just takes the whole report out. As long as we're taking all the good parts out of it, we might as well finish taking it all out. So I'd offer the A18 amendment.
Senator Jazinski moves the A18. Members, discussion. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would view this as friendly, though I do think there still may be some utility to causing the agency to justify whether or not the budget proposal is consistent with trunk highway purposes, because there are quite a few things that we've listed quite specifically that are not trunk highway purposes, as we saw in a previous amendment. But this will be a continuing conversation, so I'm fine with taking the 18 out and coming back to it in conference, because I think there's some stuff in the other bill as well.
Okay, thank you, Senator Dibble. Mr. Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Boyd and I are working on a technical amendment related to this amendment that would repeal the session law that authorizes Ms. Boyd might be able to better speak to this. We're in conversations.
Ms. Boyd.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I wasn't prepared for this. I believe in the A8, and I need to double check. I believe in the A8. Yes.
A18.
No, I'm sorry, in the earlier A8 amendment
sorry,
that was
yeah.
adopted, the technical amendment, that because this language is in under the A1, moving this Attorney General / MMB report from session laws to statute, the underlying laws report was repealed in the A8. So if the A18 is adopted, there won't be any report, no session law, no, and I'm not sure that's Senator Jasinski's intent. So we just need to discuss how to deal with that.
I'm stalling for you, Senator Jasinski.
1 second, Madam Chair.
Unfortunately, we deleted session law. Oh. So the goal would be to continue in session law.
Oh, so we can just maintain the status quo.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
Yes, we maintain the status quo. That would be the goal.
This is where we need music.
All right. Okay.
Senator Jasinski.
Madam Chair, I think our council needs to do a little work on this, so I'll withdraw the amendment at this time.
Senator Jasinski withdraws the A18. Members, amendments. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A7 amendment.
Senator McEwen moves the A7. Is that in our packet here? A7, yeah. Senator McEwen, would you like to describe the A7?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The A7 amendment is for from Senate File 2591, which I am carrying and which we heard in this committee. It's also been through the Judiciary Committee. It allows for the use of right-of-ways for transmission lines. And it is under all of the stakeholders worked together over a course of a few days at the very least, a little bit longer than that actually, I think, to come to an agreement on the language that would, number one, make sure that there was accommodations for public safety considerations in this, and then also addressing a concern brought by the agency about relocation reimbursement. And the language that we ended up with preserves essentially the status quo in terms of that reimbursement allocation. So that's the amendment, the A7. I ask for your support.
Senator Dibble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your work on this, Senator McEwen. I know there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of back and forth. What seemed to be a simple bill turned out to be a complicated bill. We had repeated visits to the table. I think some in your absence even, because you were busy in another committee doing a lot of work. So appreciate all your work kind of shepherding the conversations and the compromise, and I would view the A7 as friendly.
Members, any discussion on the A7? Okay, all in favor of the A7, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The A7 is adopted. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A10 amendment,
Senator Carlson moves the A10.
and I think it needs to be passed out.
Okay.
It's a very simple amendment. I can describe it while it's being passed out.
Great. Senator Carlson.
It has been suggested that, just to make clarification on page 129, lines 27 and 31, after the word parked, we insert, and people are present and visible outside the vehicle. And that's just to make sure that it's real clear why a person would give them the extra lane. So it's page 129, lines 27 and 31, and page 130, line 6, same words. And people are present, visible outside the vehicle.
Thank you, Senator Carlson. Any discussion on the A10? Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hadn't seen this or had the benefit of conversation, but Senator Carlson is one of our resident traffic safety experts, and I fully trust his judgment and would view this as a friendly amendment.
Okay, members, all in favor of the A10, please say aye.
Aye.
Senator Howe? No, we hadn't voted yet.
Well, Madam Chair, and I actually have an issue with this. I think anytime you've got a vehicle sitting on the side of the road with flashing lights on, you should give way and give that extra lane. Having been myself on emergency vehicles sitting alongside the road, just because you don't see them out there yet, you don't know if they're going to step outside that vehicle. So you should move left and give a lane. So I've got some real concerns about this language. Just because you don't see anyone, you're going to go screaming right by them, and somebody opens the back of a fire truck and step out. I don't think this is wise language.
Senator Jasinski?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Howe. We might disagree on this one, but my concern is if there's some of those times there's a car there, the lights are flashing, they've been flashing for a while, nobody's there, and if you're in heavy traffic, the people that try and move over can cause a lot of traffic. I see it on I-35 coming up from Faribault quite a bit where there's one there. So my concern would just be that it would cause some traffic congestion because of it, but I understand your concerns as well. If there's nobody there, and this is just a private vehicle, this is an emergency vehicle, this is a private vehicle to my understanding, and I know a lot of times they'll put their lights on and leave and go get help, and there's the car is there and it could cause some traffic congestion issues is my concern, if I read it right.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Carlson. I'm a little bit with Senator Howe on this one. Having been in a car with my lights flashing, with my kids in the back of the car, and like feeling the way your car shakes as someone drives past you at high speeds, I think like those are dangerous situations, and it's not just because there's someone outside. It's dangerous for the people in the cars too. I understand the concern about traffic congestion, but I think many times in this committee we have prioritized traffic safety, and I guess I would have some concerns about this as well.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And is there a reason in the original bill here, the original A1, that we're deleting lines, most of the discussion about authorized vehicles? Is that going somewhere else, or why did we delete the emergency vehicle piece of this and then we added, well, it looks like we just deleted that piece. So I guess now we're making it so they move over for everyone. I guess that's the discussion that we need to have here. But I do believe it's if you've got a vehicle sitting alongside the road with its flashing lights on, and if you've got room to move over, you should make the attempt to move over, in my opinion. So you just never know. Somebody could be in the vehicle and they're going to get out and change their tire and they step out and you get schwacked. But I understand there's plenty of vehicles sitting alongside the road also that have their emergency vehicles on. But, you know, I guess when I make the distinction of whether I'm going to move over or not, if I see the state troopers' big chalk mark on it that says they check it, yeah, I'm probably going right by it. But if that's not there, I'm giving way.
Senator Dibble. Do you stand by your original statement?
Well, I stand firmly with both committee members, with all of my committee members. Madam Chair, I'm wondering, I hate to get too deep down the rabbit hole on this matter, but I'm wondering if we can just strike the words outside the vehicle. That would get to Senator Jasinski's concern and Senator Port's concern. Granted, sometimes it's not easy to see people in their vehicle, but oftentimes you can.
Mr. Greenfield?
But to preserve maybe the spirit of the goal of the amendment and allow us to have more discussion.
So would you like to offer that oral amendment, Senator Dibble?
I'd like to first see if
Senator
Carlson might be agreeable to that suggestion.
Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was something that was cleared with with Colonel Langer of the State Patrol, and I'm wondering if maybe we could ask him to come and help describe what the reasoning was behind it.
Is Colonel Langer here?
Madam Chair, I don't think Colonel Langer is, but there is a representative from the State Patrol who I recognize.
Welcome to the testifiers table. We're looking forward to your testimony on this amendment. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Captain John Olson with the Minnesota State Patrol. The way that I read this, and I apologize, I was having a conversation in the back to Senator Howe, when you're deleting the definitions of an authorized emergency vehicle, it puts us in the same bucket as troopers, as regular motorists who are stranded. So my concern is if I'm in my squad car, I'm not visible, I'm not outside my vehicle, will people have to move over? So to your point of removing outside of the vehicle, that might help clean up the language.
Thank you, Captain. Senator Howe?
You know, even I still have the feeling that if you're even in your vehicle and haven't gotten out yet, I still think that's an issue. And you're deleting the authorized vehicle. I just have concerns about the entire piece of that when you're deleting the authorized vehicle, and then you're putting the tow truck driver, the police officer, everyone in the same bucket. And like I say, usually if it doesn't have the markings on it that it's been checked, I'm trying to move over. And I think that's the safe thing to do. And if you absolutely can't, that's a judgment call by law enforcement, whether it's heavy traffic and you can't, they can understand that. But to me, I think if you haven't been on that highway sitting alongside, and I've had colleagues killed by drivers that clipped them, so I'm a little sensitive to this piece.
Senator Dibble?
So,
Others?
So I'm back to, so actually, Madam Chair, just having a thought here.
Senator Dibble, we're going to be due for a recess soon. Perhaps we should recess now to discuss further. We were planning a brief recess.
Oh, all right. I do what our CA
News
tells us
to our
do.
chair.
So, all right, Madam Chair, why don't Senator Carlson, if you could temporarily withdraw the A10, we can discuss this matter.
Okay, members, we will recess for 10 minutes. Welcome back to the committee. Senator Dibble. We are still considering the A10 amendment.
So, Madam Chair, I think Senator Carlson is intending to withdraw the A10 for now, and we have a different approach on this subject on its way.
Senator Carlson?
I withdraw the A10 amendment, and we're offering another amendment. I'll offer that amendment.
Senator Carlson withdraws the A10 amendment.
Withdraw the A10 and offer an alternate amendment. I don't have the number of it yet.
Okay, Mr. Greenfield.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, unfortunately, we need the amendment before Senator Carlson can offer it. The draft has been sent to drafting support up in our office and is on its way. He's gotten in plenty of steps today, bringing amendments down, so he knows the route.
While we are waiting with bated breath for the new A10, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly, but in my A18 amendment, I think it had conflicting language with the A8 amendment, so I think we need to ask Senator Dibble if he'll withdraw his A8 amendment, or no, not withdraw it, if we could reconsider it, thank you, and we can look at one specific line and then go back to the 18. So I would ask Senator Dibble if he would reconsider the A8 amendment.
Senator Dibble, will you reconsider the A8?
Madam Chair, I move to reconsider the A8.
Senator Dibble moves to reconsider the A8. We don't need to vote on that, do we? Okay, Mr. Greenfield.
Madam Chair, the A8 is now before us, and I believe the instruction to reconcile the A18 and the A8 is to delete on the A8, page 6, lines 24 and 25 and 26. So on the A8 amendment, which is the technical amendment that we heard about an hour ago, we are going to be deleting page 6, lines 24 to 26. This deletes the repealer of the session law for the Attorney General's report on highway purposes.
Madam Chair, I'll make that.
Senator Dibble.
I'll make that motion.
Senator Dibble moves to reconsider the A8 with that oral amendment. All in favor of the oral amendment. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The oral amendment to the A8 is adopted.
Madam Chair, I would move the A8 as amended.
Senator Dibble would move the A8 as amended. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The A8 as amended is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator
Now I would like
Jasinski.
to offer the A18 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A18.
Madam Chair,
Senator Dibble.
I would accept the A18 as friendly.
Senator Dibble accepts the A18 as amended.
No, as is, but friendly.
As what?
As friendly, accepted as friendly.
Ah, accepted as friendly. Okay, discussion. Members, all in favor of the A18, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The A18 as amended is adopted. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try to get these through so we can get out of here. I'd like to offer the A42 amendment,
Senator Jasinski moves the A42.
and I think that one needs to be distributed. I've talked with Senator Dibble about that, but we did not have that one drafted as of yet. So if our staff could disperse the A42 amendment. While they're doing that, I've noticed that the tab fees are going down for vehicles. So what this does is does a tab fee study to understand why we're seeing declining vehicle registration income across the state.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be curious to know, too, so I would accept the A42 as friendly.
Discussion to the A42, members. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The A42 is adopted. Senator
Madam Chair,
Jasinski.
one more and I'll take a break.
Excellent.
I'd
Senator
like to offer
Jasinski.
the A24 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A24.
And while this one, I think, is in your packet, the A24, I've been doing a lot of work with the State Patrol over the last 6 years and met with them and done ride-alongs and had proposed new aircraft for the State Patrol. I know their number one priority was a new twin-engine helicopter, which does such a valuable is such a valuable tool across the state. This one would add a plane. I know I've talked with the State Patrol, and I believe they have one Cessna 172 that's very aged, causing a lot of maintenance issues. It's just not economically feasible to keep that airplane anymore. So I'd like to propose to add one aircraft, or one airplane to the State Patrol, both in acquisition and operating money. I did not designate where that would come from, so it does go over the budget, but I talked with Senator Dibble on that and allowed him the freedom to see if he can find that money in his budget to do that somewhere with a hopes that we'll get this airplane replaced due to the high amount of maintenance that is being done on it right now. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Dibble, for considering this.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. I did consider it. I'm not supportive of this amendment at this time. It does put us above our target. I will, however, pledge to try to find, I actually haven't had a substantive conversation with Colonel Langer about this subject, so I will do two things. I will seek out Colonel Langer and have a substantive conversation about this situation with this airplane, and I will take a very hard look at where we've placed our one-time general fund budget target. I also see there's some funding from the trunk highway for ongoing, which is probably fine. And we'll give this very, very close consideration as we move from this committee to the next or the next. We have two more stops before we get to the floor.
Members, any further discussion on the A24? Okay, members, all in favor of the A24, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay. The amendment is not adopted.
Madam Chair.
Members. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to offer the A41 amendment.
Senator Howe moves the A41.
And members, what this does is actually require a study from the Commissioners of Transportation and Management and Budget, and basically look at the registration fees that are imposed on electric vehicles, you know, and the gas revenue, and see how that looks. That would be at a minimum. I would like to see them look at all the trying to make that even as far as what the electrical vehicles are paying, and maybe impose a tax, but at least we could get a study on how that looks and try to make it comparable and report to us, and maybe we can make some headway on that piece in the future that would be comparable, and at least we'd have a study to go off of that would give us some information.
Senator Dibble, your thoughts on the A41?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Howe, for the A41. I very much am in favor of the A41. I think this is extremely important. And we really do need a really strong proposal to come back from this study, hopefully in time for, yes, it's January 1st, 2024, in time for the next legislative session within this biennium, because this is a conversation that is not going to go away, and we really do need some really strong proposals to come forward from this effort. So I would strongly support the A41.
Okay, members, further discussion on the A41? Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Dibble and Senator Howe. I think this is a great amendment, especially combined with the tab fees discussion. We've got to figure out why our revenue is going down, how we can impact that, and as electric vehicles are becoming more popular, we need to figure out what that path for dedicated funding looks like. So I am very excited to see this study.
Members, the A41 is before us. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The A41 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got one more.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is something that we've actually had amended on, and we've been working on for quite some time. And last year it was amended on to the omnibus bill, and that bill didn't go anywhere. But this is the compensation for state law enforcement officers, and actually having MMB consider the pay studies that are going to be comparable and going out to 2032. And that would, then this thing would sunset at 2032, and it would actually, for years, we've been asking them to use the pay study in discussions. First of all, they said that there was not an active pay study, so they continue to use pattern settlement. This would, pattern bargaining, this would just ensure that they actually use that pay study that we're having the OLA do, and instead of just those studies collecting dust, they'd actually use them for the salary compensation that they were trying to get the State Patrol up there. And so that's what the A17 does.
Senator Howe moves the A17. Senator Dibble, your thoughts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, yeah, Senator Howe did mention to me that this was coming, and we have had this discussion in this committee previously. I'll just start by saying I would oppose the A17 at this time. I do understand that it has been taken into the parallel bill in the other body. A couple of concerns have been brought to my attention this year. This bill is actually sitting in another committee. The chair of that committee has requested that we not take this into our bill at this time. I'm also aware that a number of concerns have been raised that are pretty marked by MMB on this. I'll also just note for the record we have in this underlying bill provided both a deficiency funding for the Department of Public Safety for the troopers and the salaries that we've delivered for them. In recent years, we've increased their pay kind of outside of the collective bargaining process. We've also provided Department of Public Safety with operating pressure budget position that's inflationary budget pressure. We've addressed and responded to that. The concerns that MMB raises, which we'll have the opportunity to hear more about as we move into conference, are around what is the turnover rate with troopers vis-a-vis the rest of employees in state government. How does taking this position affect comparable positions, classifications across the rest of state government? What does taking this position have to do with, or what are its implications for pay equity principles and rules and laws that we have to follow? These are all the kinds of examination and analysis that we have to have on a proposal like this. These are very, very important and serious conversations that we need to have. So Senator Howe, I'm with you in spirit. I've supported these requests by the troopers for a long time. I've been sympathetic to, where their pay has been relative, particularly to metro area law enforcement. We've gotten them, I think, up to, right where other law enforcement agencies are, at least the information that I received recently around that. And like I said, we've provided quite a bit of budgetary effort on behalf of troopers in recent years, as well as in this underlying budget.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Dibble, thank you for the consideration, but they are still either at the bottom or second from the bottom in pay in the study. So as much as we offered them and gave them more money, it was nothing compared to what other law enforcement agencies have received. Keep in mind, we did this very same thing to increase correctional officers' money. We did this, if you look at the University of Minnesota, this is exactly how they did it. And so this isn't nothing novel or new. This is pretty much standard out there. If they've got a pay study, that's what they do to increase pay. And we've got the OLA that does a very good study. It's just, I seem ridiculous that we do these studies and then all they do is collect dust and we don't force the agencies to use them. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll ask for a roll call.
Roll call is requested. Further discussion on the A17 members? All right, then with that, the clerk will take the roll on the A17.
Chair Dibble?
No.
Vice Chair Morrison?
No.
Senator Jasinski?
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
Aye. Carlson is a no.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe, Senator Lang, Senator McEwen, Senator Port,
No.
There being 2 ayes and 6 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Amendments, members. Senator Jasinski,
Thank
you're
you, Madam
back.
Chair. I took a break, so I'm back. I apologize. A lot of amendments, but we have a couple of members absent, so I'm trying to fill in here. This is an amendment we talked about earlier in committee. I'd like to offer the A46 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A46.
And Madam Chair and Senator Dibble, while this is being dispersed, this was the 60-40 split we talked about for MnDOT buildings. I understand that there is a lot of work that is done out of the MnDOT building that is considered transportation uses, but I think there's also quite a bit that is not. So what this does is split that and take 60% from the trunk highway fund and 40% from the general fund. And with that, I'll have a council go through it to make sure they get it accurate, how that is dispersed or how that is done.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the A46 amendment, let's walk you through it very briefly. What it does is make an appropriation. In current law, the cost of operation maintenance of the central office building is from the trunk highway fund. What this amendment will do would be to take 40% of that estimated cost and take it from the general fund and leave 60% in the trunk highway fund appropriation. And that quote-unquote savings from the trunk highway fund is then appropriated to the state road construction appropriation. So that is on lines 1.4 through 1.6. That's an increase for the base appropriation for state road construction. And I should note that all this change starts in fiscal year 26, except on lines 1.7 and 1.8, that is a small increase of $1,000 in fiscal year 25. For state MnDOT's buildings appropriation, and that rider language starts on 1.10. That's 1,000 in fiscal year 25 is from the general fund, and then in fiscal year 26, the base on that appropriation represents the 40% of the estimated costs of the building. And then on lines 117 through 119 is the reduction from the trunk highway fund base appropriation for buildings, reflecting the additional general fund appropriation for that provision. And then because spending this amount of $2.5 million approximately from the general fund would put us over budget or over target in the tails, line 1.20 is a reduction in another area, that is the active transportation line. The ongoing amounts, instead of 3.6 million, would be 1.052 million, and that would bring us back in target.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Senator Jasinski and I had spoken in concept. I am actually sympathetic to this and want to accomplish this outcome. I'm not sure that I want to, I'm not ready to, to pick and choose where we would take the general fund, which area of the general fund target we would shave down. And probably not a surprise, I'm not active to cutting active transportation at this time. So again, with the commitment that I want to continue to work on this, and I'm glad for the amendment, for most of the amendment. I'm not ready to support the amendment in this form at this time, so I would encourage a no vote.
Okay, members, further discussion on the A46?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Again, we've worked very well this last year and actually the last 6 years. So with that commitment, I would withdraw the A46 and continue to work on this with you as you do understand my concerns. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Jasinski withdraws the A46. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A14.
Senator McEwen moves the A14. Senator McEwen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This A14 amendment is a package of rail safety. And both of these, the bills that have gone into this amendment have been heard before this committee. And I believe I misspoke with my last amendment. I said that that had gone to judiciary. I meant this one has gone to judiciary. The other one had gone to energy. My brain is tired. But so the two bills this comes out of are Senate File 3187. That is Senator Kupek's bill, which was heard last week, and then Senate File 1417, which is my bill, which is the two-person crew requirement. So those two bills we feel are timely, and we'd like to see this package of rail safety measures added and supported. Ask for your support. Thank you.
Senator Dibble, do you have comments on the A14?
Thank you. I'm supportive of the A14. I have it. Thanks. I'm supportive of the A14. Does everyone have it at their place?
Yes.
All right. So I just want to make sure everyone has it in front of them. So yes, I'm supportive. This is the bill that we heard on Friday, Senator Kupek's bill, as well as the merging in of Senator McEwen's bill that we've heard previously on two-person crews, and I'm very supportive of that, particularly in light of the recent accident, crash, I guess we call them crashes now, not accidents, in West Central Minnesota, and also, of course, in Palestine, Ohio, which has been very, very concerning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Greenfield has a clarifying comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chair Dibble and Senator McEwen. I just wanted to emphasize or clarify for the committee that on page 9, line 2, the minimum crew size section is taken from the House file, the second engrossment from House File 1272. There is a slight difference in paragraph A that relates to the Kenilworth corridor. I forgive my pronunciation of that. That was picked up, that is in the House language, that wasn't in Senate File 1417 that we picked up here in the A14.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make an oral amendment to the amendment.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I understand the majority of the amendment, but I know there's been a lot of concern over subdivision 4 on page 12. It's a pretty heavy increase from 2.5 million to 4 million. There's some splits of percentages there between railroad and pipeline. I think there's more work that can be done to look at the detail of it. I know we can continue on with it in the future to try and figure out what that is, but I think that's a pretty substantial change in subdivision 4, and would like further time to work on that to get those dollar amounts respectable where they should be, and have further discussion.
So, Senator Jasinski.
So with that, I offer the oral amendment to strike subdivision 4 on page 12.
Okay, thank you, Senator Jasinski. Mr. Greenfield, do you want to enumerate that for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Jasinski. Just so I understand your intention correctly, you want to remove the entirety of subdivision 4.
On lines 12.19 through 12.28.
Madam Chair and Senator Jasinski, so the amendment is a little more complicated than that, but it would read on page 12, lines 19, strike the old language. On page 12, line 20, delete the new language and strike the old language. And then page 12 on lines 21 to 22, strike the old language. Page 12, line 23, delete the new language and strike the old language. Page 12, line 24, strike the old language. Page 12, line 25, delete the new language and strike the old language. Page 12, line 26, strike the old language. Page 12, lines 27, delete the new language and strike the old language. And page 12, line 28, strike the old language.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Senator Dibble, do you have comments on the oral amendment?
Well, Madam Chair, I would defer first to Senator McEwen's opinion of Senator Jasinski's oral amendment as maker of the motion, and then I'll have an opinion.
Senator McEwen, my apologies. Your thoughts on the oral amendment on the A14?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I guess I'm not aware of these issues that are being brought up right now by Senator Jasinski. There may be issues and ongoing conversation. I think that's fine. I'm a little uncomfortable changing anything about this, not having heard anything from Senator Kupek or other stakeholders that there are issues and that would be the right solution. So I guess at this point, I'm not comfortable saying, sure, let's just change the number. That might be something very important about this piece. And so I would, unless there's additional information that Senator Dibble or others have that could shed light on that, at this point, I would ask respectfully for this not to be changed or supported as an oral amendment at this point, and that perhaps those discussions can continue as the bill advances.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for those comments. Again, this bill just came to us just last week, and it was a late bill, and I think we need further time to look at it. So I would ask that, again, I would oppose you opposing it, and I would like to have it done. But I think council needs to do one more clarification on that oral amendment just to make it accurate.
Mr. Greenfield.
That's, Madam Chair and Senator Jasinski, that's correct. I believe if you're referring to the additional stricken paragraph C on page 12, line 29, that would also be incorporated in the oral amendment. So the final instruction would be page 12, line 29, strike the old paragraph C notation.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. And with that, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I respect Senator Jasinski's point. This is a late bill. Needs a lot more conversation. That being said, I do think these assessments are important to keep in place. I think railroads are experiencing quite a bit of increase in corresponding profitability, presenting a lot of hazard, a lot of danger, which I think they have an obligation as they're basically moving through our communities to do everything they can with their efforts to cooperate with our public authorities to keep our communities as safe as is possible. And so I respect that we need to have more conversation. I think we're more able to have more conversation. We motivate people to that conversation by keeping the language as is.
Okay, members, any further discussion on the oral amendment to the A14?
Madam Chair,
Senator
I
Jasinski.
like a roll call on both the oral amendment and the underlying amendment, please.
A roll call is requested on both the oral amendment and the underlying amendment. With that, the clerk will take the roll on the oral amendment to the A14.
Chair Dibble,
No?
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe, Senator Lang, Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
There being 2 yes votes and 6 no votes, the motion does not prevail. The oral amendment to the A14 is not adopted. Discussion to the A14. Any further discussion? Okay, the clerk will take the roll on the A14.
Chair Dibble,
Yes.
Vice Chair Morrison,
Yes.
Senator Jasinski,
No.
Senator Carlson,
Yes.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
Yes.
Senator Howe, Senator Lang, Senator McEwen,
Yes.
Senator Port,
Yes.
Senator Coleman, Senator Lang,
There being 6 yes votes and 2 no votes, the amendment prevails. The A14 is adopted. Amendments,
Madam Chair.
members. Senator Jasinski.
Like to offer the A20 amendment, please?
Senator Jasinski offers the A20, moves the A20.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe you have it in your packet, or maybe you didn't. A20, I think it was. This has to deal with online drivers training. I know there's been discussion of the teleconference type and the online. I think there are benefits to both, and I think that given the option that it would give Minnesotans more choice on how they like to do it. Some people do better at self-paced. Some people do not. The teleconference, or I can't remember the exact discussion of what that term was, but the teleconference mode of driver's training, I think also offers a valid way. But again, I think the individual should have the choice of how they choose to do that online, either as teleconference or online self-paced. I know on the teleconference one, I don't believe there's any restriction on the number of people that can be on that. So you could have 5,000 people on a teleconference, not that the actual number would be there, but I mean, it gives no maximum on that. So I think the online version, again, is a very valuable asset. It's self-paced with people in Minnesota, how busy they are and sporting events and other things going on. I think the online driver's education program offers a great opportunity, especially with more and more people taking the test with just recently passed legislation on driver's license for all. This gives another option. I know we've heard many, many times that the lines are long to get testing done and the education. So I think this would be a great option. And again, people do have the choice. They don't have to pick one, or they can pick one or the other. Whichever suits their family the best would give this option. So I'd ask be considered friendly, but I have talked to Senator Dibble about it. I know there are some concerns about it, but again, I think it's a great option for our Minnesotans to have that option to them. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Senator Jasinski and I did speak earlier about this amendment. This is an interesting discussion because it does not fall down on party. I think both the Gustafson and the Jasinski bills had bipartisan authors. So of course, in light of that, I would, leave it entirely for members to, make their decisions, as they do all, make all their decisions based on their own conscience and wisdom and insight into these matters. For my part, I was persuaded by actually one of my constituents, interestingly, who came forward to talk about some of the drawbacks of purely online versus the kind of teleconferenced teaching model like we saw through much of COVID, and some research that shows that the important information that's conveyed in that manner isn't quite as effective as could be or should be in terms of especially young people learning what they need to do from the content that would otherwise get from classroom training that's delivered online. So I'm not supportive of the A20 myself, but everyone, of course, can make their own decisions for themselves.
Members, further discussion to the A20. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask for a roll call.
Senator Jasinski
Senator Howe, you have some
requests a roll call, and Senator Howe has a question.
Well, thank you. No, I actually don't have a question.
A
I
comment.
actually like this amendment. I've heard from a great number of my constituents about the long lines getting into the driver's training, getting the test, and I think this would go a long way in solving some of those issues, especially as it looks to me like we're going to reduce the number of sites out there where we can get this, take the test. So I'm actually supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Further discussion? Okay, the clerk will take the roll on the A20.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
Yes.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
Yes.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
Yes.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang, Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Senator Herr.
I'd like to change my vote to no.
Senator Herr changes his vote from aye to nay.
Senator Coleman, Senator Lang,
There being 4 yes votes and 4 no votes, a tie does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Members, amendments.
Madam Chair.
Senator Dibble.
I'll jump back in. I have 2 more amendments to offer. That is, unless I'm missing some, but I think I've got them all here. Madam Chair, I'd like to offer the A27 amendment.
Senator Dibble moves the A27.
I think that's in front of everyone. So, Madam Chair, what this would do is it's kind of another run at the notion of elected Met Council. First, it would delete the study commission that's proposed in the A1. And it would change the other idea that was in the A1, which has to do with setting up Home Rule Charter Commission, which it would do, but with some changes. First of all, it would have the members of a Home Rule Charter Commission established by the Chief Judge of Ramsey County, whom I haven't called, so he has no idea that I'm signing him up for this task, but he'll be my next call. So it would establish 11 folks to do that. And then a process for terms and selecting a chair and providing for expenses. The powers and duties would be for this commission to frame a proposed charter for the governance structure of the Met Council and confer with experts, et cetera. Of course, ask them to take a look at whether or not Met Council members should be elected. And then rather than specifying all of the details around the charter and when it would be submitted to the voters and the language, et cetera, it would have them make that proposal and then provide a report back to the legislature on what they would propose to have done and what changes to law would be necessary should they propose a charter, basically reconstrue the Met Council as a local unit of government with home rule charter, et cetera. If that's clear.
I think that's pretty clear, Senator Dibble. Members, discussion on the A27. Okay.
All right, I renew my motion.
Senator Dibble renews his motion on the A27. Members, all in favor of the A27, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The amendment is adopted. The A27 is adopted. Members, are there more amendments? Senator Dibble.
Oh.
Senator Jasinski. Oh, boy. Okay, Senator
All right,
Dibble.
so Madam Chair, I would propose the A36. I forgot that I promised Mr. Kirshner that I would do this sooner, and I just completely forgot. It's on the bottom of my pile. So the A36 is what I would propose.
Senator Dibble moves the A36.
And Madam Chair and members, this would create some policies that are responsive to a number of the recommendations from the Office of the Legislative Auditor in their examination of the Southwest Light Rail Transit Project, kind of the third of 4 analyses that they've done, or second of 4, anyways, the latest in the series of examinations, investigations, and analysis of the Southwest LRT project and what might have led to some of the delays and cost overruns, et cetera. So just very quickly, and then, if members are interested, I'll ask Mr. Greenfield to provide a little more detail, but it has to do with ensuring that when projects of this scale and scope go to bid, that in fact the entirety of the project is put out for bid, which is responsible to the issue of 2 major elements of the Southwest LRT project not being included in the original bid package. The second is to make sure that there is a contingency plans in the event of, actually I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So the second part, if in fact the work is going to be temporarily or permanently stopped, and that's responsive to the finding that once the project got rolling, there was no plan and no contingency, including funds, for stopping the plan, if in fact it looked like that might be an important option. The third has to do with the finding that there was really no enforceable schedule that was developed by the contractor, and so that created a lot of disconnect between the contractor and the Met Council. The fourth has to do with the finding that these elements that were added after the fact weren't separately bid and also weren't subject to an important process known as peer review. And so it's hard to know if in fact they were built for a fair price and to the standards, et cetera, that maybe they should have been. And finally, the last one has to do with some notification requirements if the project is going to be delayed, if it's going to run over cost, et cetera, et cetera. And I hope I did the proposal justice, and Mr. Greenfield has more to add, I see.
Mr. Greenfield, would you like to add more color?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chair Dibble. I just want to add that there's a section 30 on page 6 that pertains to when the council enters into a settlement agreement with a contractor, they must notify the legislature of the terms of that settlement agreement, the total expenditure of that settlement agreement, whether it will lengthen the timeline for construction, whether the settlement agreement resolves all outstanding disputes between the council and the contractor, and whether the settlement agreement increases project expenses and costs, and whether it requires the council to participate in alternative dispute resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Members, discussion on the A36.
And Madam Chair,
Senator Dibble.
David Kirchner from the Office of the Legislative Auditor, who was the primary or the principal investigator, is here. Should anyone have any questions or need more information?
He has been waiting very patiently. Members, discussion or questions? Senator Dibble, apparently not. So members, all in favor of the A36, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The A36 is adopted. And members, we're going to take a quick pause, not an actual recess, but a quick pause. Perhaps a 2-minute recess. Hello? Okay, there we go. We're back. Senator Jazinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we had a tie vote, I was wondering if we could reconsider the A20 amendment. Ask Senator Dibble if he would reconsider the A20 amendment.
Senator Dibble, may we reconsider the A20 amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, members. A roll call was requested on the A20. Would you re-request a roll call, Senator Jazinski?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry. First, we need to vote on reconsidering the A20. Members, all in favor of reconsidering the A20, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion prevails. Now, if the clerk will please take the roll on the reconsidered A20 amendment.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
Yes.
Senator Jazinski,
Yes.
Senator Carlson,
Yes.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe, Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
Senator Coleman,
There being 5 yes votes and 4 no votes, the motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. The A20 is adopted. Amendments.
Madam Chair,
Senator Herr.
are we having a hard stop at 5 o'clock?
Senator Dibble, do we have a hard stop at 5?
Madam Chair, we have the room till 7.
Senator Herr, we can go till 7.
So
Just because we have the room until 7 does not mean we need to stay until 7, let the record show. Senator Herr.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment, and let's see, hold on a second. Is it not 43? No. Oh, yes, it's A43. Looks slightly different. I have an A43 amendment.
Senator Herr moves the A43.
And
Senator Herr, do you want to tell us about the A43 while it's being distributed?
yes, this amendment is about bidding, and the amendment will bring the bidding process of deputy register office into an equal level playing field, or should I say more equitable. As it is now on our rule, if a deputy register office is unable to sustain or close down, my understanding is that the local government, like city or county, will have the first shot at making the bid, then followed by various private owners of register who already have their own, ownership of deputy register. They will have their opportunity to make the bid or take over the closed deputy register office. Based on this current scenario of rules and regulation, new investor, entrepreneur, or new business owner, let alone people of color, minority, new Americans will never have the opportunity to break into this line of business. So as the line 1.2 said, the commissioner must give any preference to any partner, owners, manager, or employee, or must not give any preference to any partner, owner, manager, or employee of the closed deputy register office location in the open bidding process. So I want to propose this amendment and see if the author of our omnibus bill will accept it.
Thank you, Senator Herr. Members, discussion about the A43. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Senator Herr has been discussing this matter with me, as well as a couple of others that have to do with how well we serve minority and immigrant communities in the Deputy Registrar's office. He has a couple of other ideas that he's been discussing around providing sufficient service to those with materials, as well as those on hand who can translate in those offices, as well as the radius issue, and you know, if an area is found not to be serving those communities well, allowing for an office that has that focus to locate within the service radius that has been established. So I appreciate Senator Herr and a number of these issues that he's brought up. None of these, I mean, these are very worthwhile conversations. They probably should be brought forward in the form of a bill and a hearing, because I know that that there's a lot of sensitivity around exactly how the deputy registrar and driver's license agents and both at the county and the private level, how those businesses have come about and kind of what the past practices have been, and all of that, service territory, expense of doing business, who gets to start a new one, who gets to take over, et cetera. Very, very important conversation. I think Senator Herr makes the essential point that as things are now, people are entirely excluded as new entrants in those instances when a business might be closing or changing hands. And so I would not be inclined to accept the A43 at this time, but would encourage that the deputy registrars and Senator Herr, the DLAs and others engage in an important conversation that we need to have in the interim and come back with some mutually agreed upon solutions to real problems that Senator Herr is presenting on behalf of communities that we value in Minnesota.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Herr, I would echo Senator Dibble's comments the same. I've been working with this for about 6 years now. Since I came here, we've been working on deputy register issues, and you know, we've already had 4 close already, and that's, you know, disturbing. And we're working on that, so we hopefully have a bill that will improve things, that will give the deputy registers more feasibility to remain open. But again, to not give preference, and again, I think we want the most qualified people, not closing it to anybody else, but if you have a partner that may want to buy out that person and has knowledge of that operation, how it's working, I think that's only going to benefit the citizens of Minnesota, because they can basically transition an office over from one owner to the other. So I think it should be the most qualified, and so by not giving any preference to an owner, partner, manager, employee, I think is not right. But I think I want to further the discussion with you, Senator Herr and Senator Dibble. We do have in part of the bill, we're looking at a study on the feasibility of how we're working with more and more things being pushed online and mail in. It's making it more and more difficult for our deputy registers, which is frustrating, because now the easy, simple transactions are going online, and our locals, either a business, a county, or a city, are losing out. And when you really need something and you have to go to your local agency, they are the ones that can help you, but they're not being, you know, compensated for all the stuff that's being pushed away from them. And that's going to be a huge issue, because, you know, a lot of these transactions are very difficult. And if deputy registers keep closing, we've lost 4 already. If more and more close, it's going to be more difficult. So we're looking at the fee sharing and many things we're looking at as part of my bill this year. But I'd much rather have more discussion than to vote on the A43 today. But I obviously been involved, and I'd like to work with you, Senator Herr and Senator Dibble, on something better than accepting this A43 at this time. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Senator Dibble.
I just thought of something as Senator Jasinski was talking. In the independent expert review and in this bill, I won't find the page right now, but there's this long list where we kind of threw everything that we're not dealing with, we're not quite ready to deal with in that long list of recommendations to look further at and come back with some more refinements, some more ideas, and maybe this, as well as your other 2 ideas, Senator Herr, can go on that list, and we can make that a part of that larger conversation.
Okay, thank you. And Senator Herr.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski and Senator Dibble, for making a remark on this amendment. True enough, we have closing deputy registrar office, and there may be opportunity to reinvent. Perhaps, it's not a sense of monopoly, but that's how we've been conducting business for years, and perhaps open the room for new way, new process, and maybe those who have been in this line of business is waiting for this opportunity to open, so that new blood or new entrepreneur, new investor can come to the game and carrying the burden forward, and that may be a way to maintain or grow, maintain or increase the deputy registrar office. So. Thank you for your kind word from both of you. I'm an unconventional legislator that's trying to fill the gap of things, things that are in relation to equity, and so I see this as one, as well as the radius of registrar office, and having documents that could service folks that are still struggling taking tests in English, so even that have been happening for years. It's just for new Americans to kind of continue on that service, providing language for those immigrants and refugees that continue to come to our country. I'm sure in many years past we have ballot and even written documents, tests in German, Swede, or Polish as well. And so I will continue to push for this legislation. And with that, I would like to withdraw this amendment and hope to work with Senator Jasinski and Senator Dibble on improving this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Herr. Senator Herr withdraws the A43. Members' amendments. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to offer the A35.
Senator Jasinski moves the A35.
I think that one needs to be dispersed. And again, nothing personal, Senator McEwen. I just don't agree with the Northern Links money being spent. I think there's much better money to spend on roads and bridges. So what this would do would take the Northern Links money and put it towards roads and bridges. And I have a daughter at Duluth, and I went to Duluth, and I just see the traffic going back and forth, pulling boats and campers and all those things. And I just, looking at what happened with Northern Lights and the proposed Northern Links is already going to operate at a deficit. I just think it'd be better to have money spent on roads and bridges. I know if you look at, I think the proposal is $4.1 billion that's going to be spent on transportation, and I think that's a lot of money, and I would like to see go towards roads and bridges and not some of the other items. So again, $4.1 billion is a lot of money. So I just like to keep it to roads and bridges, and something that I think is more feasible for Minnesotans, especially with their traveling habits, boats, campers, all those things, trailers, snowmobiles, you name it. When I go up 35 to see my daughter, there's a lot of vehicles with lots of trailers and things going that. So I just think it's money better spent, but obviously I understand and would offer the A35.
Members' discussion on the A35. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing personal, Senator Jasinski. I just disagree and think that the Northern Lights Express is a good investment. I think the analysis and the studies have shown that it accomplishes a number of things. It will be extremely well used by a lot of people for a lot of reasons, not the least of which are vets who are accessing the Twin Cities from not just Duluth, but an entire travel shed that the line represents and draws from, trying to get down to the VA down here, and as well as students, workers, all kinds of people. I think it's a very, very strong economic spine, and will create a lot of opportunity for folks who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity to move back and forth through this part of Minnesota. And I think it represents a lot of economic vitality, personal choice, and options for folks, and also represents an opportunity to address climate issues that are one of our existential challenges that we need to start addressing in the transportation sector. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Any further discussion on the 835? Okay, Senator McEwen.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a roll call.
Senator McEwen requests a roll call on the 835. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, and I happen to agree with Senator Jasinski with the $4.1 billion increase in taxes in this section of law. I think we can do this much better. I will tell you what, the estimated use, Senator Dibble, that you mentioned, it was very similar to the North Star line going to Elk River and up to St. Cloud, the same high estimate of use, and we've seen that come crashing down and hardly being used. So I do believe that that there's a much better use for those funds. I think the estimations, if this passes, I think you'll see the estimations being way far off again, just like the North Star line, and I do believe that this money that's part of the $4.1 billion is going to be a misuse of those funds that could be doing great things and satisfying some of all these potholes that we're having to deal with currently today. Thank you.
Members, further discussion on the 835? Okay, the clerk will take the roll on the 835.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe, Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Lang,
Lang voted.
Aye.
Madam Chair? Oh.
There being 3 yes votes and 4 no votes, the motion does not prevail. I'm getting tired. The A35 is not adopted. Amendments, members. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, I'm going to offer, looking at this, I don't know about the rest of you, but my phone and my email has been lit up with regards to the delivery fee. This is something that I don't remember having the discussion. I wasn't here for all the committee hearings, but I don't remember hearing it. And so with that, I'm going to offer the A30 amendment.
Senator Howe moves the A30.
So, Madam Chair, what this does is it deletes the delivery fee and uses the general fund for that purpose. And I know that that's going to have an effect on the target, but I believe that's the right thing to do, and we can have that discussion. But, you know, with the $4.1 billion tax increase and this being part of that, my phone is lit up, and so is my emails with regards to this delivery fee. And I think there's a lot of questions involved in this because the concern is if you have multiple, we haven't had the discussion whether there's multiple purchases on one delivery. Is that 75 cents per purchase, or is it 75 cents per the delivery? If I buy something from and one purchase from Home Depot and it takes 3 trucks to get it there, is that one delivery fee? Is that multiple delivery fees? We haven't had that discussion, and with that, that's why this would delete that piece, and it would shift those funds to come out of the general fund. That's basically and if staff would like to maybe make that a little bit clearer, but I think that's the gist of the amendment, and if people have questions to the specifics, they can probably get to staff. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, discussion to the 8:30. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I of course would oppose the 8:30, and I'm willing to respond to any questions that folks have about it. That's the purpose of this hearing. But the reason for the delivery fee, of course, is that if I felt like there was an appetite for some of the more traditional sources, we probably would have gone with those. But the fact of the matter is the bill, as presented, really only responds to about half of the need that's been identified. I mean, we need new revenue to support transportation and to support our roads and our bridges. And this goes a long ways, but, actually, I wouldn't even say half, probably less than half. Anywhere from, depending on which category you're talking about, a quarter to, a little past a third of the identified need, whether that's Trunk Highway Fund or CASA, MSA, city roads that aren't on the MSA system, county roads that aren't on the MSA system, townships, local bridges, et cetera. We know that we haven't really done much. We've done a lot of one-time, but one-off bills for transportation, particularly roads and bridges. Puts a lot of pressure on our property taxes when we don't support our local roads. And we have all those potholes that we keep hearing about. And so this is an effort to think creatively, think of a user fee, try to get some resources outside of the gas tax, focus towards transportation to try to get to at least, do something that's worthwhile. So that's the point and the purpose. In terms of the delivery fee as it is, of course, we can, and I've just met with the retailers this morning. There's a lot of excellent points that have been brought up, and I'm wide open to any kinds of changes that seem reasonable, whether that's delayed effective date or, some of the technical issues that they've experienced in Colorado, which this is modeled off of. So absolutely, we can continue to have this conversation, but I would not support its elimination.
Members, further discussion.
Madam Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you. And I support Senator Howe's amendments, and I've had a lot of discussions with retailers as well. And it's a fee, and again, at $4.1 billion, we're going to be collecting on top of a $19 billion surplus. It's a lot of fee increases. It's a lot of taxes. It's going to be affecting our senior citizens across the state who get medication delivered to them. In rural Minnesota, that happens a lot, where they get their medications delivered via a delivery like that, so they're going to be being taxed. I know there's some confusion over, I think it's fruit juice versus another juice that has a certain percentage, that there's a lot of questions of if it qualifies or if it doesn't qualify. I know the date is obviously concerning to me, and I've had many talks with that, so at some point I will make that amendment if this fails, but the effective date of July 1st, 2024, from what I'm hearing, to reprogram software, to have it on receipts, and all the things that the retailers have to deal with is not doable. So I think that's one of my big concerns, but again, I think the fee, and I don't remember hearing that bill as well. I think it came from the other body, but or somewhere. But it's concerning, again, with how it's being done, the number of packages, who it affects. It's going to affect a lot of our middle-income people negatively. And so I'm concerned about it, and I share Senator Howe's concerns. And I guess I don't know what the time to do it is if this fails. I'd like to get a point in where we at least change change the effective date. I don't believe it's in your amendment, Senator Howe, but the effective date needs to be changed. I know that, hearing from that. So I'll ask council when the correct time to change the effective date is. Maybe it's after this amendment fails, maybe, if it does fail. But I know we need to address the effective date no matter how this amendment goes or does not go on. So that's my concerns. It's a big concern to me. Again, $4.1 billion in increases is concerning to not only to me, but to a lot of my residents. And so I want to voice that concern.
Senator Howe.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for those comments, Senator Jazinski, and you're right. $4.1 billion is a lot of money to spend. And the concern I have is, and Senator Dibble, I think outside the box all the time, and so I appreciate this is kind of the outside the box thinking, but I just wish we would have had it in committee to have those discussions, because I'm getting a lot of questions from my constituents, and I can't answer them because we didn't have the discussion. So I think this is a fair amendment, and I'd ask for your support. And with a roll call, Madam Chair.
Roll call is requested. Senator Dibble, did you have final comments, or have you spoken your piece on this one?
I'm good, Madam Chair.
Okay. The clerk will take the roll then on the A30.
Chair Dibble,
No?
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jazinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr, Senator Howe, Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port, Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Port,
There being 3 yes votes and 5 no votes, the motion does not prevail. The A30 is not adopted.
Madam Chair,
Senator Jazinski.
I'd like to make an oral amendment, and I'll have council maybe help me with that, but the effective date is a concern to me. Again, I think there's got a lot of programming that has to be done to show it in the receipts or not. And I know there's been some discussion with the chamber, the retailers, and many, many other entities or stakeholders that this effective date is just simply too soon to be done properly. So I think I'd like to see it pushed out 1 year, and I don't know how many lines that addresses, but I'll leave that over to council to see if they can make that effective change to 1 year beyond the July 1st, 2024.
Ms. Boyd to the oral amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a number of sections in Article 3 that deal with the delivery fee, and I will point those out. The first is on page 35, line 22. And in each of these sections, I assume the motion is to change the date from July 1, 2024 to July 1, 2025. And the first section is just a definition section relating to the retail delivery fee. So that change will be on 35.22. The next will be on line 36.5. That's section 7, actually imposing the fee. And that date change again would be to July 1, 2025 on line 36.5. Next on line 36.12, this is a section dealing with exemptions from the retail delivery fee. So on 3612, change the date to July 1, 2025. On line 36.26, a section dealing with actual collection and administration of the retail delivery fee. So 36.26, change the date to July 1, 2025. Line 37.5, this is the section on deposit of proceeds from the retail delivery fee, and that is on 37.5, change the date to July 1, 2025. Line 38.8, this section deals with allowing the Department of Revenue to retain a portion of the retail delivery fee proceeds for costs of collection. So on 38.8, that date would also change to July 1, 2025. And finally, on line 39.21, this section deals with how the sales price is calculated and calculating the retail delivery fee. And so on 39.21, that date would change to July 1, 2025. So there are 7 instances of that date changing.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Senator Dibble to Senator Jazinski's oral amendment to the A1.
So, Madam Chair, if I accept this, does Senator Jasinski become a big supporter of the delivery fee?
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Dibble. Honestly, I guess not. Still not in favor of the 75-cent fee, but I know if it is implemented, that I know these retailers have some valid concerns of getting that done. So, no, I don't support the 75-cent fee, and I apologize for that, but I think they need more time. So, thank you, Senator Dibble and Madam Chair.
Senator Dibble.
I got very excited, Madam Chair. Thought we were going to see a bipartisan deal cut right here in the room. So no, as I said in my comments to the Senator Howe amendments, I'm open to this discussion. I'm open to a number of changes. You know, I think we've already seen some consideration of some issues in the proposal as it's presented in the A1, and there will be more to come, including this very subject. So I appreciate Senator Jasinski's amendment and the discussion, and some of Senator Howe's points that he's raising. This will continue to be refined. There will be a lot of open, transparent negotiation and discussion. If this becomes a viable proposal as it moves through the process, it won't be as we see it here. It'll be significantly changed. So at this point, I would not propose a change in effective date, but look forward to the continuing conversation.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Further discussion? Okay, members, we are voting on the Senator Jasinski's oral amendment to the A1. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay?
No.
Nay. The motion does not prevail. The oral amendment to the A1 is not adopted. Amendments. Oh, yeah. What is that? I would like to offer the A37. So I move the A37, which is a technical amendment to Senate File 3157, and I will ask Mr. Greenfield to explain, please.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, the A37 is adopting language that was adopted in the House companion of the Omnibus Transportation Bill. Senator Morrison's bill, Senate File 2790, has been folded into this bill in both Article 6 and Article 8. Representative Kraft made an amendment to the House companion to 2790 and the House Omnibus. So this is the House amendment that was adopted that made some changes. If you note on page 1, line 6 of the A37, section 24 in Article 8 is being deleted, and that is the integration of the greenhouse gas emissions benchmarks. It's changing from placing that with the into the state multimodal transportation plan and into Minnesota's state highway investment plan. So just relocating the capacity expansion assessment that requires evaluation and impact mitigation for certain greenhouse gas emission benchmarks established by the Commissioner of Transportation. Long and short of it is this conforms the 2790 language to the House version of that language.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Members' discussion on the A37. Okay, members, all in favor of the A30? Oh, sorry, Senator Howe.
Madam Chair, and I think this is a disturbing process that we've been having here. We're picking and choosing what we take from the other body, and we're not the other body. We should be doing our own work, and this is another one of those that we didn't hear in this committee, and we're just picking up pieces and parts and putting it in, and I think that's a dangerous process to move into. The House is, the Senate is not the House. I've been in both bodies, and that's this is a much more deliberative body than the lower chamber, and I think we should act like it. And I think this is a dangerous precedent to be taking, is taking and matching up, and the that's something that we should have the discussion in conference committee, and especially when we have this type of stuff, we should actually hear the bill in committee and have a healthy discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Senator Howe, we did hear this bill in committee, but I'm just fresh from the House, so I'm learning. Thank you. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I just kind of echo Senator Howe's. I mean, this is something that we should look at in conference committee, because once you get in the conference committee, there's sames and similars, and those seem to go through pretty quickly, and we haven't had a ton of debate on this, so I think by just doing what the House has done is frustrating, but I'd rather talk about it in conference committee. Thank you.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you. The points are well taken. I'm from the House too, but it's been a while, so I'm pretty much well steeped in the Senate way. You know, this is your bill. I will completely defer to where you want to take this. I know you've had a lot of meaningful and substantive conversations with your counterpart who's working on this issue over on the House side. And we're not even supposed to say House, are we?
The other body.
The other body.
Senator Dibble.
Yes, and we don't invoke the names of the other representatives. So, so I know that you have considered this language. And
I have Senator Dibble, and that there are technical changes. I would suggest a yes vote on this amendment, but vote as you will, members. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the A37, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. Okay, the amendment prevails. The A37 is adopted. Senator Howe has an amendment, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Howe.
I'll offer the A33 amendment.
Senator Howe moves the A33.
And Madam Chair, I'll explain it. The A33 amendment basically takes the money from the blue line and has it, the money saved, go to roads and bridges for road construction. I think with the amount of money that we're playing with the $4.1 billion, we need to concentrate on the infrastructure that most Minnesotans use and not what the few use. And I think when we look at this, the majority of us get our goods and services on our roads, and this would provide more money for our road construction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Members, discussion on the A33. Senator Dibble.
So, Madam Chair, I would oppose the A33. Senator Howe may be right that most of us move around with cars, but many of us do not. And of course, there's a lot of debates about LRT and its advisability and who should be building it, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth of the matter is that in some corridors, LRT is the mode that makes the most sense. And in this corridor, I really believe that to be the case. It accomplishes a number of things, but not the least of which is that it gives people who are at present almost landlocked, very poorly and inadequately served by mobility investments, by transportation and transit investments, and light rail transit through this corridor. The Blue Line members is going to go from, you know, we know the existing Blue Line, you know, comes from the Mall of America and the airport up into downtown. Then the extension, of course, will go from downtown up to the northwest through some of the most intensely intractable areas of poverty that we have in our region. And a big reason for that poverty is because those communities have been woefully underserved by key regional investments and state investments, not the least of which is access to where jobs and school and other opportunities are. I've talked about how incredibly successful Minnesota has been for most people, but not for everybody. And that's because of the incredible investments we've made in getting people to where they need to go, getting goods to market, getting services to market. And this is an area that has just not been served well by any form of access to jobs and other opportunities. And this would be a game changer for not just that part of Minneapolis, but then going on up into the northern and northwestern suburbs. And if you look at the totality of resources that are raised in the bill, the vast majority of what's in this bill, what's proposed, goes for roads and bridges and people who have cars and, and all of that opportunity. It makes those circumstances much better and those communities much better. But we absolutely need to make sure that we're not building transportation in a way that continues to isolate those who are isolated and continue to reward those who already have so much. We need to be sure that we're doing a bill that's a bill for all of Minnesota. I strive for rural and metro balance, metro and suburban balance, and balance between people of all ages, all communities, all walks of life. And to take this away would be to severely imbalance this bill and make it really unfair for a lot of people.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Members, further discussion on the A33. Senator Howe.
Well, Madam Chair, this doesn't take all the money away from this. This doesn't delete and take the money from. It still funds the blue line. So, Madam Chair, I think, with the amount of money we're spending, the $4.1 billion, I think this is a good alternative to get some money into the state road construction, and I just ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Further discussion? Seeing none, members, all in favor of the A33, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
No.
Nay. The motion does not prevail. The A33 is not adopted.
Madam Chair,
Senator Jasinski.
I'd like to offer the A26 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A26. Senator Jasinski, to your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and maybe I'll have council go through it, but basically this makes the Safe Routes to School funding an ongoing appropriation and makes the climate IIJ money one time. It basically switches the two, and I can have council go through that to verify the details.
Ms. Boyd, details, please.
Madam Chair, I don't have too much more to add. Senator Jasinski did a fine job on that. On the A1, the funding for to MnDOT for the climate, maximizing the climate funding from the federal money is $2 million a year from the general fund starting in fiscal year 24, and that's ongoing. And what this amendment will do will change it to $8 million in fiscal year 2024, and then to accomplish that, we'll shift some money from Safe Routes to School, and then the money that would have been ongoing for the climate funding will then be ongoing for Safe Routes to School in the tails and beyond.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Senator Jasinski requests a roll call. Members, discussion on the A26. Senator Dibble.
Thank you. Senator Jasinski's trapping me between two things I love here. Members, I'll just note that we do have ongoing level of funding for Safe Routes to School. It's not as much as maybe we would want, but we have established a base for the first time for Safe Routes to School, as well as active transportation, which I'm really excited about. But I also think it's important that we focus MnDOT's efforts on climate change as well, writ large. And it's really important to provide them the resources to be able to do that, because we know that the contributions to greenhouse gases, to climate change that come from transportation is the largest contribution that we have now that we've been somewhat successful in the utility sector. We have a lot of other sectors that we need to focus on and talk about as well, but this is the Transportation Committee, and to focus the work of the Department of Transportation, which is one of their initiatives, I think is important to do.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Further discussion on the A26, members? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble?
No.
Vice Chair Morrison?
No.
Senator Jasinski?
Aye.
Senator Carlson?
No.
Senator Coleman? Senator Herr?
No.
Senator Howe? Senator Lang, Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Lang,
There being 2 yes votes and 6 no votes, the motion does not prevail. The A26 is not adopted.
Madam Chair,
Senator Jasinski.
I have my one last amendment, then I'll leave it up to Senator Howe after this, and this actually isn't even my amendment. This is an amendment for Senator Westrom that he's been concerned about and asked me to offer. I'd like to offer the A47 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A47.
And then, Madam Chair, also I'd like to offer an oral amendment to the amendment.
Okay, very good. Senator Jasinski, an oral amendment to the A47.
On line 1.26, change the effective date to July 1st of 2023 instead of 2024.
Thanks. Mr. Greenfield, could you recap the oral amendment, please?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the instruction for the oral amendment to the A47 will read page 1, line 26, delete 2024 and insert 2023.
Senator Jasinski.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I think this talks about disabled relatives with sight impairment and allows for the expanding the family section portion of that, if I'm correct. And I would ask for your support.
Members' discussion. Senator Dibble.
Madam Chair, I believe this is language that Senator Westrom has worked cooperatively with the agency on, and with the changes, with Senator Jasinski's changes as well, and so I would support the A47 as friendly.
Senator Dibble with the oral amendment. Okay.
Correct, yes.
And I'll remind members, I believe we heard this bill in committee. Further discussion to the A47 with oral amendment. Let's vote on the oral amendment first. Members, all in favor of the oral amendment to the A47, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The oral amendment is adopted. And now to the A47 as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The A47 as amended is adopted. Senator Jasinski, are you done?
Madam Chair, I'm done with amendments.
Thank you, sir. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and having just got this in my palm, I would like to offer the A49 amendment.
Senator Howe moves the A49.
What the A49 amendment does is it requires a law enforcement officer to issue a citation if the law enforcement officer observes a license plate without current registration. We've heard a lot about not pulling people over for this infraction, for not having a current registration. I think this might need to have a little bit of work done on it. I don't know if you need a citation, but at least you need to make the stop and make I think that's maybe where we need to go. If staff could help me make that adjustment for an oral amendment to make sure that, I don't know if they have to make the citation, but they at least have to make the stop. And the reason I'm concerned about that is we've got some areas in our state that have chosen not to stop people with that. And I'm going to give you an example of where this came to effect. We had a trooper that pulled over a gentleman that didn't have current registration. And he gave him his name, his address. They ran it, didn't pop up because it was Wisconsin. And so sometimes those computer things don't work real well together. So they turned around and said, hey, sir, couldn't confirm your identity, so I hate to tell you this, but we're going to have to take you downtown and print you to make sure you confirm your identity. And the gentleman goes, all right, you got me. Here he had been on the Wisconsin's 10 most wanted list, and how they got him was expired tabs. He'd been on the run for 7 years and picked him up for expired tabs. That's why it's important to enforce the law. Same thing with a taillight being out or anything else. That's how you catch the real criminals. If staff could help me with an amendment.
Mr. Greenfield.
Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Howe. My suggested oral amendment, and I'm going to try to talk as slowly and clearly as possible to make it clear, would be on page 1, line 16, after officer, or after must, insert initiate a traffic stop and may. So must initiate the traffic stop and may issue the citation.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion for an amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Greenfield, will you repeat the oral amendment, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Howe, and for members of the committee. Again, the instruction for the oral amendment to the A49 is page 1, line 16, after must, insert initiate a traffic stop and may.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. Members' discussion to the oral amendment to the A49. Senator Jasinski.
I support Senator Howe's amendment. I think he's got some good valid background for why that's done. I think a lot of traffic stops from invalid tabs do end up in things that we are very beneficial that we're pulling those people over. And again, I think we've seen those tab fees going down, so I think this may be one of those reasons. So I would be in support of Senator Howe's amendment.
Senator McEwen.
I would like to speak against this amendment. I think that this is a terrible idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's really strange to be putting into statute that you're going to take away the discretion of an officer on the scene to make a decision about whether they're going to make a stop. There might be really good reasons that they don't think it's appropriate to make a stop in that situation, and this seems overstepping our lane, for one. And the other issue is that if there are localities who have decided not to make stops or not to prioritize these stops at any rate, many times the elephant in the room here is that they're doing that to try to stop racial profiling. That's what this is about. They want to reduce the number of times that people are stopping people because of bias. And now we have an amendment that would require them to make these stops on that basis. Members, I ask that you do not support this amendment and leave this to our localities and to the officers. Thank you.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But we did just pass amendment earlier to look into the reasons for declining registration fees, vehicle tab fees. And so it would be important to, rather than to presume that this is one of the reasons, to understand what that, assuming that that study prevails and is signed into law, that we would find out more information and find out if a lack of stops is in fact attributable. It also strikes me, I don't know if we specify anywhere else in law, maybe we do, but I'm not familiar with any other place in law where we specify exactly what law enforcement officers must do in identifying and making specific decisions about stopping and making arrests, et cetera. I mean, we specify a lot of things about public safety professionals and law enforcement officers and stuff, but this is a level of micromanagement that I'm not familiar with, and I don't think I've seen before, so I would be hesitant to support the A49.
Members, further discussion. Senator Howe.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I will tell you that I would probably maybe make a huge amendment this, and maybe we'll look at this in another draft, but locality can take a law that's on the books and say they won't enforce it. I think giving guidance to law enforcement on the other side, saying you're not going to stop someone and not going to cite someone, I think just flies in the face of the legislature who put that law into place. So as this may seem a little harsh going the other way, it's only the pendulum swinging. And that's what happens when you go too far one way, not enforcing the laws in the books. And now we've got folks that are trying to make it so at least you make the stop and you make the inquiry. Whether you give them a citation for that is a whole nother matter. So, Madam Chair, I'll ask for a roll call on the amendment. Thank you.
Members, Senator Howe requests a roll call on the oral amendment to the A49. Further discussion? Seeing none. Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, could you please clarify? I'm a little confused about where we're at right now with the oral amendment and versus the amendment.
Senator McEwen, Senator Howe offered an oral amendment to the A49 that would change line 1.16 to a law enforcement officer must initiate a traffic stop and may issue a citation under this section if the law enforcement officer observes a license plate. So we are on that oral amendment to the A49.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like a roll
Senator
call
Howe.
on the amendment and the underlying amendment.
Senator Howe requests a roll call on the oral amendment and on the underlying A49 amendment. So with that, the clerk will take the roll on the oral amendment to the A49.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang, Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Lang,
There being 2 yes votes and 6 no votes, the motion does not prevail. The oral amendment to the A45 is not adopted.
Madam Chair,
Senator Howe.
with that, we will look at it one more time and we'll withdraw the amendment for now and we'll look at it another day.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Senator Howe withdraws the A49. Members.
Madam Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Sorry, I was too late on that one. I want to address Senator McEwen's comment again. It says nothing to do with racial profiling. It's profiling people that break the law. Nothing to do with racial. It's people who break the law. If they're not paying the tabs and they're breaking the law, that's why you pull them. It's nothing to do with racial profiling. It's pulling people over who are breaking the law. Thank you.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have another amendment that Ms. Ethier was kind enough to remind me of. So I'd like to offer the A38 amendment.
Senator Dibble moves the A38 amendment. Senator Dibble.
And I actually don't have a copy of it here.
Okay.
So.
Can you discuss it while it's being distributed,
Yeah, so,
or do you need it first?
Madam Chair, the members might remember the meeting about sustainable aviation fuels, and a part of that conversation was also about another bill that's working its way through, the process that ultimately was going to end up here, but Senator Herr killed me, stalled my bill. I'm just kidding. It just kind of got stalled in the Environment Committee for a number of good reasons. And so this is all part of a larger conversation around moving to the earlier conversation we had about climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector, to see if we might be able to have a conversation during the interim about moving ourselves down to no more contribution to climate change from the transportation sector by 2050 through increasingly cleaner fuel and or increasingly cleaner forms of propelling transportation. In the aviation sector, of course, that is not going to happen for quite some time. So if we can create fuel that's more environmentally friendly, for the coming however many years, that's an important part of that conversation. So this would ask that there be a working group to take a look at these questions and bring some ideas back to the legislature next year.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Members, discussion on the A38. Seeing none, Senator Dibble.
I renew my motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, Senator Dibble moves the A38. Members, all in favor of the A38, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The A38 is adopted. Members, don't tease me. Amendments?
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer that
Senator
I have no more
Jasinski.
amendments.
We done? Senator Dibble.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the debate, the conversation. I think we've said it all. I'm not going to give a big stem winder of a speech. I think as I opened up and through some of the debate, I've articulated what my hopes and aspirations are. I always appreciate this committee and its hard work and how earnest and deeply held our perspectives are, and the fact that we bring our best selves to this debate and this work. As much as we disagree on some issues, I think we do it very, very well and very respectfully, and I think we've put together, a pretty bipartisan package, but for, some major elements of it. So I understand if we're not going to get a bipartisan support on final passage, but look forward to continuing the work and the discussion, and hope that we ultimately can end up in a place where we're really doing well by the people of Minnesota and getting them what they need to have successful lives.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Dibble, I want to thank you for your willing to work with us across this whole session so far in the Transportation Committee. I know we don't agree on some things, but we've at least been given the opportunity to have our bills heard, have the discussion. So I do appreciate that. And we'll continue to work to make the bill better. There's a few things I know we're still working on. One of those being with our deputy registers. We're working on some things there, the Quarters of Commerce study. So I do appreciate you hearing our bills. I obviously have some frustrations. It's a $4.1 billion in increases. And right now, Minnesotans are struggling with lots of things. And we're going to impose increases. We're going to add surcharges. We're going to add delivery fees. And right now in Minnesota, I think is tough because people are struggling to make ends meet. Another section in here, I think it's Article 8, Section 6, brings some concern about transportation greenhouse gas emission impact assessment. I know we've had some rather large road projects that we're doing across the state, and something like this could really delay those things. I think it's another hoop they have to jump through with those studies. And we've had some interchanges and some things like that are obviously, we have more and more traffic happening in Minnesota, and if we're going to have a impact assessment on that, could slow things down. It's just another added hoop. I know a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions are tailored after the California standards, and I think last time I searched, they had 24 million cars on the road, and Minnesota is somewhere around 2 million. So there's a big difference between California and Minnesota. And if you look at air quality and things like that, Minnesota is actually standing pretty good compared to California. And we're tailoring a lot of things towards California. And the people that I talk to in my district have concerns that we're making our laws like California or like California. I know they're different, but Minnesota is a lot different than California. We have a lot of trucks, we have a lot of RVs, we have a lot of boats, we have lots of things going on in Minnesota that California does not. So there's some concerns there. But again, the $4.1 billion increases over 4 years is a big, and a lot of those are increased fees. Motor vehicle sales tax is getting increased. The tab or a surcharge on tabs, a delivery fee. are all things we're adding more money from our constituents. So I have concern, but again, I do appreciate working with you and working through the differences in the bill, and thank you for that. So thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Okay, oh, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to echo some of what Senator Jasinski mentioned. I appreciate the openness and the discussions we've had and your willingness to hear some of our bills. And I look forward to continuing to work on I think a fair assessment of the charging of the EV fuel tax. I think that's an important piece. And I think I had wished that we'd take a stab at that in this bill and maybe get rid of the delivery fee, because I think that needs a lot more discussion before we put that in place, because the way it looks, everyone's going to be paying more. And some of those folks that can't get out and have to order in their groceries and whatnot, I think is a real detriment, especially for those mothers with young babies, that type of thing, that can't get out and need to order for formula and diapers and all the rest of that. I just think it's a bad way to go, and I think we should add more discussion on that. So with that, I still appreciate the openness. It's your bill, and it's everybody's got a piece of it, and I appreciate that. That doesn't always happen in all the committees. So thank you, Senator Dibble.
Senator Dibble.
Madam Chair, I would move Senate File 3157 as amended be recommended to pass and refer to taxes. Or
Discussion. Okay. Senator Dibble moves that Senate File 3157 as amended be passed and referred to the Committee on Taxes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Senate File 3157 as amended is adopted, and it's on its way to taxes. Congratulations, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. So everyone have a wonderful break. When we come back, we actually are going to meet again. We have, of course, we're going to hear all of the community requests. We're going to bring forward Chair Zelli for his confirmation hearing, as well as the Met Council members, although I don't think we have the paperwork on them quite yet. So when that comes forward, we'll have the confirmation hearings on the Met Council members. And then at some point, we're also going to hear the OLA report on Southwest LRT. Maybe we'll have two to listen to by then. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there anything further, Ms. Ethier?
Thank you, Senator Dibble. With no further business, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.